Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Cognitive Recalibration Podcast. As always, I'm your host Shravan. We've got our co-host Tyrone here with us.
Hey everyone.
And never before done, or at least on our podcast, we've got 3 guests because we're going to be talking about Mandalorian Season 2. A lot to talk about. There's some big reveals in that finale, so we're going to right into all those spoilers. But first what we'll do is we'll do non-spoilers. So first I'll introduce our guests. So we've got 3 brothers actually. We've got the whole family here. So, Bhaskar Cherukuri, Bhargava Cherukuri, and Bharadwaja Cherukuri. All welcome all.
Hi.
Howdy.
Hello. Nice to be back.
And I guess I should mention that you're all massive Star Wars fans. I think all of you are.
In varying gradients, yes.
Yeah. You could say that.
Yeah. Probably more than us, right? I mean, you're sort of Star Wars.
No, I hate Star Wars.
Yeah. So we hate Star Wars and you love Star Wars.
There you
So we've got that.
2 good camps to have on a podcast.
So Mandalorian Season 2. I'll give you some quick background and we can jump straight into it after that. So the first episode for Season 2 was released on the 30th of October. It's created by Jon Favreau. And the development actually began back in July 2019. So even the first season wasn't even out yet and they already started developing the second season. The filming took place between October 2019 and March 2020. And they were actually very lucky with this because they finished just before they had the shutdowns due to COVID. So I think it was like 4 or 5 days before they had the shutdowns. They finished all the shooting. So that's why they were able to release the season this year itself. Post-production, however, was completed remotely. So all the re-recording actually, so Ludwig Göransson's score was done remotely for this season. We'll get into all the stuff that's been announced, but a 3rd season has been already announced for this. A bit about the music. So unlike the first season, so what happened in the first season was for every episode they released a score, but for this one they just released 2 sets of scores. So one was for the first half of the season and one was for the second half. On Christmas Day, there was a special premiere on Disney Plus where they showed the making of this season as well. Haven't watched it yet. Probably should have in preparation for this, but that's all right. It's too late now. Quick question before we start on this season. Where does the Mandalorian sit in the Star Wars timeline?
So in technical terms, if we're talking about the Battle of Yavin stardate, apparently it takes place, if I'm correct, 9 years after the Battle of Yavin.
Which movie is that?
A New Hope. So it's the end of A New Hope. First, the Death Star blown up. That's Battle of Yavin.
Yep.
So it takes place 9 years after that, which is technically 5 years after the end of Return of the Jedi.
According to Shravan's notes, that is correct.
That is correct. I was just testing your knowledge, but you're exactly right. 5 years after the Return of the Jedi, and it's 25 before The Force Awakens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And there is a very specific reason why I delved into the timelines. It has to do with one of the characters who is appearing in Season 2.
Okay.
Oh, do we get prizes for answering these questions right?
Does he have, like, chocolates?
Yeah, do you have Milky Ways?
What is our incentive?
I'm only taking part if you've got chocolates.
Okay. Chocolates, okay. Didn't realise you were 10 years old. All right.
The reward is knowledge. There you go.
Pride.
What a jib.
2 bits of trivia. So this was similar to the first season. It was filmed on this technology called Stagecraft, which it's basically like, from my understanding, it's like a massive LED screen, pretty much. And that's the set. And what happened during the first season was one of the executives came onto the set. I think it was Kathleen Kennedy. She came onto the set and she saw the screen, but she didn't think it was a screen. She actually thought it was a set. And she went up to Jon Favreau and she's like, "Didn't you say you're not going to build anything for this series? What's all this?" And he's like,
This sounds like a bullshit story. Like, this never happened. You don't go into a place and you see a screen and you're like, oh, no, it's not a screen. It looks real. Well, that's bullshit. No, that never happens.
Maybe it's so photorealistic that it looks real.
No, this is just propaganda.
The way, if you watch, I didn't see the full making of, but if you see how they did it on Stagecraft, they actually had real life props, like actual sand and rocks and boulders on set. And then they would project an actual image of the outside real set on the background. And if you stood in the right place, due to the parallax settings they were playing with in stagecraft, it actually would look real. From that perspective.
I call bullshit. I call bullshit.
Well, either way,
There's
it looks
no
amazing.
way.
It looks amazing in the series, though.
No, it looks amazing
Yeah.
in the series.
Yeah, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
To the point where you can
But
even see like reflections
If
of
you're
it.
on a set, you would know there's a TV projecting it. You would not think they built an actual set. You just need to go on a different angle and you can see the back of the TV.
You can have this argument with Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah.
Get her on in the future.
She must have been sitting pretty far back. already.
Okay, so we'll go into our overall thoughts, spoiler free, in case someone still hasn't seen this.
Have you guys all seen it?
Yep.
We've all seen
Oh
it.
yeah,
Okay.
we've all
Just
seen
the
it, yeah.
audience. Like to.
Yeah, so I'll give you my initial thoughts. I thought this was probably one of the best seasons of television that I've seen, personally. I thought it was great. Big standout for me is just the way this looks. It looks like movie production values. It looks amazing.
Except for one particular scene, which we'll get to later.
All right.
But everything else looks amazing.
So it looks like you're just watching a Star Wars movie, really. It looks quite spectacular. And the reason I like The Mandalorian so much is because it explores parts of Star Wars that are not related to the Star Wars movies. It's just a part of the Star Wars universe, but completely unrelated to what we've seen in the movies, which is what I just like that they're doing something different. Get into my thoughts later on other stuff, but I think that's the biggest advantage for me about The Mandalorian. We can go around the table. So any positives that you have, Bhaskar?
All positives for me, from me, I guess. Coming out from season 1, there was a lot of, the bar was set quite high. Season 1 Mandalorian really redefined what it was to make a long format, 1 hour, 8 episode saga on strictly something Star Wars in real life, which has never been done before. And I reckon they pulled it off amazingly well. Now season 2 begins. Where do they go from there? And as a long-time Star Wars fan, I have to echo, it's one of the most incredible, you could say, convergence of like old school fans, new generation fans, Clone Wars fans, Rebels fans, all into one format. And it's never been done like that before. It was reminiscent of Jon Favreau's efforts with Iron Man in marrying the Marvel universe for the new generation. So this is like the beginning of something quite significant. Like you said, the production value was even from the very first episode, the production value was incredible. It was actually felt like it was sitting in a movie theater, to the point where even the aspect ratio of what you were seeing was maxed out. So like in terms of their technicality, production, soundtrack, score, even the cast, incredible cast. Yeah, it's everything as a kind of diehard fan. It's everything you want to see on screen. And it didn't disappoint, especially when it came to that finale.
Just on top of that, I would say that one of the things about season 1 that I think stopped a lot of people going further was the pacing. The first few episodes were a bit slow, whereas this one, I felt season 2, the pacing was perfect. I didn't feel at any point that it was going slow or it was running too fast. It was just perfect. And to echo what you said, Sravan, about how it touches on other areas of the Star Wars universe that we didn't get in the movies. So I don't think they've ever gone to a major star system in The Mandalorian. It's all been in the Outer Rim. And for me, that's great. It just touches on the stories that you would never get in the movies. And obviously we'll go into spoilers at the end, but the fact that they've been able to do that and still maintain a story that's not only enjoyable to watch, but you actually empathize with a lot of those characters, I think that's really well done. And when you've got so many directors working on the same series, that's really hard to do. So you have to commend them on the fact that different directors have been able to bring in their own element, but keep it the same show with the same consistent performance and everything. It's been great.
Yeah, I think for me it was just a breath of fresh air, because I know that for me the sequel movies just sort of systematically killed any interest in Star Wars that I had. Because like they're just terrible story, terrible characters, everything. And then Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, they walked out of the theaters with sort of the same sentiment and decided to come up with this show and then really give the fans what they wanted and then make a really good, refreshing show that sort of renewed my interest in the universe and keen for just more Star Wars now.
Look, my positives are probably the same as all of your positives. I think everyone on this table is pretty positive. So just to have a bit of change of pace, I'm going to go a bit negative because I don't think any of you guys are going to go negative on anything. So I think I should give the different point of view.
You'll hear some negativity from me later. Yeah.
Overall, I think I actually really liked it. I thought it was a great season and I'm keen for season 3. But what I would say is that most of the episodes this season felt like a backdoor pilot to a different series that they want to do later on, rather than concentrating on the actual Mandalorian. which he doesn't get too much play in this season, unfortunately. It's mostly just like, oh, we're going to do a series on this guy, so we're going to introduce him in this episode. We're going to do a series on this guy, so he's going to be in this episode. It's not actually a Mandalorian season. It's a Star Wars jumping off point for other characters, which some people may like. I thought it could have been better if they just concentrated a bit more on the Mandalorian.
I agree with that, but I think it still fitted in the overall story. I think it made sense the way they did it.
It did, but he doesn't get much play overall. I think his character and Baby Yoda's character, I nearly said his actual name. Baby Yoda's character.
Is that a spoiler? Is that still a spoiler now?
I don't know. Is that a spoiler?
Well, if you haven't seen it, I guess it is. So
Yeah. It doesn't spoil anything though, just a random word.
Spoils everything.
Yeah, I think they don't get as much play as they possibly could have because they're introducing other characters and other story points to build off on this huge Disney Plus universe that they announced. So, yeah.
I actually do have some negatives, which I'll go into spoilers.
There's more negatives I have in spoilers.
Yeah.
That's my spoiler-free negatives.
Yeah.
I guess
You got me there, damn.
one last thing I'll mention, the music, which you briefly mentioned, I think it sounds like Star Wars, but it's so different from Star Wars as well, which is what I really appreciate.
There was this really cool music beat they used in the last episode with these particular, the bad guys in the last episode.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Daft Punk.
Yeah.
What's that kind of music called?
Electronica, or you could say even
Synth.
It's very unlike Star Wars.
I've never seen that in Star Wars before, which was
a lot
cool.
of people described it as dubstep.
Dubstep, that's what I was going to use.
It was bordering on dubstep, but definitely it was more EDM.
It was like good dubstep.
Since we're talking about season 2, I'm guessing season 1 is not so much of a spoiler talk right now. There was a lot of that used during Moff Gideon's kind of scenes whenever he, towards the end of season 1, when he'd be very kind of, lord-like and kind of establish his power balance. That music would come in every time the stormtroopers took out the E-Web blasters and were trying to, show some dominance. So we kind of got a hint of that in season 1. It stepped up in season 2. So it's like you kind of take a step back and exactly as you said, Shravan, it's kind of like, well, was this music Star Wars? And he actually...
It fits.
It fits. It's like, okay, I guess this is Star Wars now.
It was different in a good way.
All right, we'll give out ratings, I guess, and then we'll jump to spoilers. So for me, it's obviously cognitive recalibration. If you haven't seen it, just watch it. Even if you don't like Star Wars, just watch it. Give it a chance, and you'll probably appreciate it in some
Good
sense.
TV, yeah.
There's Baby Yoda for all those people that don't like Star Wars out there. You can just watch him being cute and saying shit.
The MVP.
MVP, yeah.
MVP, yeah.
I feel like he's the selling point for all the people that don't like Star Wars.
Yeah. And he's probably in it a bit more in this one, right? Yeah. He's got a...
I think he's in it less this season than last season.
But he has more cute moments.
Nah, I think he had cuter moments last season.
All right. Well,
when he held that cup, that was cute.
Oh, yeah.
Tea. Chai. I think it's 5 p.m. chai.
I think they...
we'll get into spoilers, but yeah. I mean, I was going to say that, but we'll get into spoilers.
Yeah. That's true.
You were going to say his name again, weren't you?
Without getting into spoiler talk, I felt like, well, in terms of the technical, bringing Baby Yoda to life, the puppetry was actually pushed to the limits in this season. They actually tried to doing more with that, which is great to see. That's like, I think everyone wanted more.
It's good that they use practical effects at this because it makes everything look more realistic, except for this one point where they don't and it doesn't look as good. But overall, they tried to use practical effects for the most part and it looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Are we giving our ratings as well?
Yes, definitely. You can do whatever ratings you want. You can do out of 10, out of 5.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, straight out of the box. I want to give it a perfect score, but I do know that there are some niggling things that they were trying to do right. Like you said, Darren, I do agree with you. They were trying to kind of bring in some characters, seamlessly merge them in while still giving kind of a platform for future kind of parts. There was some other technical, small, like nitpicky stuff, but I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. For me, it's one of the most wholesome and kind of true experiences for Star Wars. It doesn't get any more, you could say, closer to the real lore, spirit, and anthology of the series than this.
I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. There's a few things that...
For this season.
Yeah. There's a few things that I will discuss a bit later. Overall, I thought it was amazing, like really, really strong. But yeah, looking back, there are a few things that I would have enjoyed to see a bit more, which I'll discuss soon.
Yeah, I'd say 8 out of 10 sounds good as well. Even some of the episodes where I wasn't sure where it was going, they still managed to sort of captivate you as well and bring a good story. So yeah.
All right, and you can give us your rubbish rating now.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Finally.
I didn't even think about that, actually. I didn't have a number in my head.
Okay.
No, it's good. It's good.
All
That's
right.
my rating. It's good.
Good. Okay.
But that's on a scale of, I don't know. You don't know what that scale is like. It's on any scale. Yeah. Good could be the best that I could give. So who knows?
Okay, we'll jump into spoiler talk. So obviously, if you haven't seen Mandalorian Season 2, go and watch it. Come back to this point in the episode and listen to our spoilers. You've been warned. We'll go through each episode in order.
Episode by episode. Yeah.
And we'll talk about what happened in each one, any particular points we want to talk about, and then we'll go from there. So,
Episode 1.
I guess I'll...
Directed by Jon Favreau.
Directed by Jon Favreau, written by Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
So it's Chapter 9, The Marshal.
Yep.
Since you're so keen, you can tell us what the story was in that episode.
Are we going through the story each time? I thought we just like kind of briefly
Just high
go through it.
level.
Yeah,
High
like
level, yeah.
there's a monster,
Yeah.
Timothy Oliphant, Boba Fett suit, kill monster.
Timothy Oliphant is not the monster, just making that clear.
Yeah, sounds like a character from Lord of the Rings. Oliphant.
Kill the monster.
Yeah.
Save it. It's the classic, like, this series is a lot of, they go to this small town, there's a monster, Mandalorian needs to kill it and
For a favour.
get more information or get something out of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically
Which
all
is
the
not the
episodes
worst, yeah.
is he meets someone, he needs information from them or something from them, and
then
he helps
they
it out.
make him do something for the information. That's the general gist of everything.
All I'll say is the whole series sort of has a Western feel, but this particular episode has a very Western,
This is like particularly, yeah.
Western
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah, so this was an interesting episode. One of the standouts, I think, was just the communication with the Sand People. Because they're sort of used as props in the old films. They're not really explored too much. But they sort of go into more about how they're a different civilization and how they're not necessarily just bad people who just kill everyone that they see. That they have their own agenda. And yeah, I think that was really done well in this episode. And yeah, we like that.
Yeah, look, it was satisfying seeing, obviously with the whole Boba Fett's armor and everything, it was good to see Tamora Morrison at the end. Especially with the whole Boba
We didn't know it
Fett
was
tease.
him at that point, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was a big tease at the start, right? In season 1, you get a
You
glimpse.
could kind of tell it was him.
No, I mean, like, when you see his armor for the first time, like, in the episode, and you're like, wait, that's not Boba Fett, he's too tall, and he takes the thing off, and it's actually
Timothy
the
Oliphant.
Marshal. It's
Okay,
actually,
but at the end of the episode,
At the
You
end,
see his back, right?
He turns
No,
around.
you see
He
his
turns
face.
around.
You
He
see
turns
his
around,
face.
and then his face is all scarred, and then he walks off.
Yeah.
And
You see his
yeah.
face.
So you see him. So that was really satisfying, because, like, in season 1, you get a glimpse of his feet, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, is that him? And then this one...
Next to robot lady.
Yeah, and then this one, you see his armor, and you're like, is that actually him? And it's not, and it's like far out, and it's like finally...
But you can tell it's not him because the armor is just like really
Really
ill-fitting.
loose? Yeah, it's really,
it does
like,
not fit him well
too
at
tight.
all,
It's
which is
really
good.
tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really tight, and yeah, obviously it just looks weird, I think.
It looks so weird on him,
Yeah.
which I like that attention
Yeah.
to detail because they could have made it look good on him, but Tamara Morrison's a very different size to Timothy Oliphant.
He's
so
like a
it
foot
just-
shorter.
Yeah, it would have made sense for it to fit on him.
Longer,
Yeah.
wider.
Well, he wasn't that wide. He's
Yeah.
wider in this. He wasn't that wide in the prequels.
Yeah, that was the other... Oh, it did bring back, like, Knights of the Old Republic vibes, like killing a great dragon with explosive. That was very, very, inspirational.
I've got some,
And the what was it? The egg or there was like that object they retrieved from the Great
It's like
Dragon.
the gallbladder or something.
Yeah, that was directly from Knights of the Old Republic.
And then they ate
That was
it.
direct.
There's lots of people eating weird shit in this series as well.
Yeah.
like the Mudhorn egg in the
Yeah.
first season.
Or like eggs.
Eggs, yeah, which we'll come to in a second.
I guess on that, there was a video game called Star Wars Bounty Hunter in 2002.
Oh, I've seen footage of that game.
It's for the
Yeah.
GameCube, PS2, Xbox generation.
Yeah, and apparently in that you also fight a Great Dragon on Tatooine, so it's maybe referencing that.
Yeah. So the very first reference for the Great Dragon is in A New Hope. You see right after C-3PO and R2-D2 crash land on Tatooine. They're walking past this massive skeleton. That's the first ever kind of reference of Great Dragon.
Yeah, that's right.
So this one in Mandalorian was something like 10 times bigger than that skeleton. So neat little references. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about Boba Fett. He was one of those kind of characters that didn't get a lot of screen time in the original trilogy, but became notoriously famous. And
if you actually look at him in the original trilogy, he does jack all. He does absolutely jack all, and then he dies. And then he dies. Yeah.
Yep, pretty much like Captain Phasma in the new
Worse than Captain Phasma.
He gets really,
does nothing that proves that he's
actually a bounty hunter.
That he's good. Yeah.
Yeah, like he gets jabronied at the end by Luke. Like, he just gets
not even by Luke. It's Han Solo that hits,
Han. Yeah,
hits him in the back with the lightsaber, and then he flies into the
Sarlacc pit.
The Sarlacc, yeah.
And it's funny how he became he became famous purely due to the action figure. Like right after the movies came out, kids went nuts over the Boba Fett action figure. They were kind of playing with it. It got notorious from that, which is a really interesting connection. And it was only after that all these kind of theories and kind of fan stories started coming out about, well, what if he survived the Sarlacc pit? You know, what if he actually came out and was active, and afterwards he was trying to seek revenge. That's when the extended stories of, Boba Fett, Dengar, two bounty hunters came out, and it actually became legends. There was a novel written about Boba Fett surviving the Sarlacc pit, blowing it up with a thermal detonator, losing all his armor, but coming out like scarred and flesh. That was legends. That was completely written off canon in 2015.
Now it is canon.
So now some of that is some of those
you don't
elements.
know if it's exactly
the
thing about Star Wars is that the legends, the series, the books, the comics, whatever, all of them, there's so much shit written in those legends comics that there's nothing new that you can do in Star Wars. It's all written. Something, if you do something, it's like, that happened in legends in a varying degree.
In a varying degree.
Yeah.
And I think Dave Filoni is one of the executive producers for this show and also advisor for this episode. If you've seen his other works, he's a real kind of fan of looking at that Legends lore and bringing stuff from there. So it's really interesting to see the journey that has been made from this kind of phantom character to kind of a fan favorite. Everyone's been doing theories about how he's going to come back. There's tons of YouTube videos about how he can resurrect, and finally seeing that in the flesh of Temuera Morrison. That was one of the biggest kind of paybacks. So he was, for those who haven't seen the originals or who have made that connection, he was the actor for the clones in Attack of the Clones. And Jango Fett requests to have a clone son of himself, which is basically Temuera Morrison age. So it worked out well, and that was a perfect end to the episode. And I think even just as I was talking about the whole screen aspect ratio, they were playing with like changing up the whole 16:9 format. If you notice one scene, they just remove the black bars and zoom in the whole aspect, so the whole TV feels like an IMAX experience.
Yeah. So the whole end battle sequence, I think it's not confirmed whether it was shot in IMAX, but it's in that ratio, the IMAX ratio.
Yeah.
So I noticed that as well because I was watching it on a monitor actually, and I noticed the whole monitor was suddenly lit up.
They did it really slowly, so you didn't. It kind of just felt like you were getting more into the action. So that's
I was watching it on my computer, and then for that scene, it showed up on my TV somehow. No, it didn't happen.
Another bullshit story.
That's like Kathleen Kennedy's bullshit story.
Okay.
A tiny little nod a little reference. Timothy Oliphant's character rides a speeder bike that's powered by a pod, which is very, very, very reminiscent of the one that Anakin raced in episode 1.
I think there's a hint that it is. Like when I went on Reddit and stuff, everyone was like, it's Anakin's pod.
Most likely would be,
pod racing engine. Which is pretty cool.
So it's an interesting reference they thought to put in there.
There's a couple more references I've got. This is leading back to Star Wars New Hope. So apparently the Tusken Raiders travel in single file, leaving a set of single footprints.
Yeah.
That's shown in this episode as well, but that's what Obi-Wan says in A New Hope. So that's a method of concealing their numbers. Another thing, so apparently Obi-Wan, he uses the same sound as the Crate Dragon in A New Hope to scare off the Tusken Raiders. I don't remember this, but apparently that's the sound he makes.
I think this was before the George Lucas edit. So the original sound he made was a very kind of monstrous roar. I don't know why he changed it in the special edition, but it doesn't sound as scary. It sounds a bit more kind of like an alarm.
Like a vacuum or some sort of sound coming through. It's weird.
Yeah, like a woo, like an actual dude wailing in the sky. Whereas the original cut of the sound was meant to be very monstrous. Yeah. So yes, that's it was meant to be that sound. I think they somehow found the archival sound of footage and used that.
All right, that's all I had in terms of this episode. So
episode
2, chapter 10, The Passenger.
By
okay.
Here we go. It's what's his name? Ant-Man dude. I'm forgetting he did the last episode as well. What's the first letter of his name?
P.
Second letter?
Okay, E.
Is it? No, is it third letter? What's the start of his last name?
R.
No. He directed Ant-Man though.
Yeah, so Peyton Reed.
Peyton Reed, I knew it.
Yeah.
Written by Jon Favreau again. This episode released on 6th of November.
Can you cut out that previous part? And then
No, I'm leaving
Peyton Reed, that's the director of the second episode. Just replace it with that part.
This is completely unedited. So.
They get the raw experience though.
All right. So this is the episode with the frog lady.
Frog lady.
Yeah.
Eats babies. Baby Yoda likes eating her babies. And
It's funny that she
Spider
doesn't.
babies.
Does she not notice that half
half
of them
of them are
missing?
gone. Yeah.
I think she laid so many she kind of doesn't register that one is missing. But it's a very interesting episode. The fact that they started the whole stake was he was looking for other Mandalorians, and her husband has information, but to get to her husband, they have to ferry her. And yeah, the kicker in the pants is no hyperspace because somehow that kills the eggs, which I've never heard of.
It's very much a filler episode.
Yeah,
I didn't hate it though. I thought it was pretty good. Yeah.
In some, I think Buddy also had the same sentiment. It's one of those episodes where if you just took it out, what are you missing? For me personally, though, there's a lot of kind of setting the tone and setting certain character traits and establishing the dynamic in this episode that happens. But we don't realize until later on why they were put in. I think that feeling of being marooned on a random planet in the middle of nowhere calls back to a lot of Rebels and Clone Wars episodes. Of just the clones or Phoenix team being marooned on a place. There are some references to the animated series in this one. So they crash land, they're trying to escape the 2 New Republic officers on the X-Wing, and they finally get up into this ice planet, they fall down, and they encounter a bunch of weird spider-like creatures. They do have a name. They have an official name. So these creatures are called the Krykna, and they made an appearance in Rebels. Because one of their home planets is Adelon, and that's where the Rebels set base, but they encounter these weird creatures. So it was interesting seeing these kind of appearances.
Just on that, I've got a trivia fact on that, actually. It's good that you brought it up, because apparently one of the executives that were involved in this, they confirmed that it wasn't actually those creatures, because those creatures are meant to be blaster-proof and have 6 legs, apparently. So apparently they're...
Got rock Bhaskar.
A lot of people did think it was that, but apparently they're not.
It was confirmed that they're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they are, I think the design was very inspired because they have 2 eyes. They have the same kind of mouth tendrils, but I think the legs, they did look a little bit less, you could say, tentacly. So they didn't have as many limbs, but I thought it was actually inspired off of Ralph McQuarrie's art for Empire Strikes Back, the knobby white spider, which he drew. That was the original source material for using that in Rebels, but I think they may have used the direct art for that in Mandalorian. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it was inspired off. It was actually based off unused concept art from Empire Strikes Back. Yeah.
Redeemed himself.
Just in the nick of time.
At least he did get Peyton Reed wrong.
So you can just cut out that last part.
Yeah, cut out that last part. Bhaskar, just say that last part you said again.
Yeah, that's the knobby white spider, isn't it? And Ralph McQuarrie's unused concept art.
The spiders, this was just me, but this was the first of a couple of references that reminded me of Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, yeah.
Aragog. So Aragog, and this episode reminded me of
but
that.
Ron doesn't eat any of the spiders in Harry Potter. Baby Yoda loves eating the spiders.
Yeah. I would have thought it would be like an alien reference because the eggs
Alien
are very similar.
It looks like the alien eggs, actually.
Yeah.
Very creepy, yeah. Gave me the shivers.
You didn't like it, did you? Yeah.
Just
you don't like horror stuff.
Like, not horror stuff. At the moment, like, Baby Yoda walked up to it and you see, like, the egg open up. I was just like, oh, God. Like, that sound.
But then he eats it.
Yeah, and then he eats it. I was just like,
he loves eating everything.
He just eats anything, right?
He just eats whatever.
He has a taste for the unborn.
It just makes you wonder what Jesus Christ.
Jesus.
It took such a dark turn.
That is so dark.
Bringing it right back into the fold.
This is why Master Yoda
Loves
became a
younglings.
teacher.
That actually, the moment before, when the frog lady's got her eggs out in the pool and Baby Yoda's trying to get some of the eggs, that's the first time you hear Ludwig Göransson's theme for the baby. Like the proper theme that establishes it throughout. And you hear it again in the finale, but this is the first time you actually hear that kind of full of wonder, kind of childlike theme that's full of like very starry and sci-fi, but
For Baby Yoda.
yeah, it's a beautiful theme. And then if you listen to the track, it transitions perfectly into like these spiders waking up, and it's just very, very kind of ominous and just shivering.
So one question, you know how the guys in the X-Wing, what are they?
The New Republic.
The rebellion
Yeah.
pilots.
So they turn up and they save them, right?
Yeah.
But then
Also,
they-
one of those guys is, I don't know
Kim's
if you guys said
Convenience.
Kim's Convenience.
Yeah.
He's the dad in Kim's Convenience.
And the other
yeah.
one's Dave Filoni, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Paul Sun-hyung and Dave Filoni makes his cameo in this one.
So they save them, but then they just leave them. Did they expect them to just like fix the ship by themselves, or like?
I guess so.
Yeah.
So the idea was they were in the beginning scene when they hail him before they even crash land. It's that whole to and fro of you could be an Imperial vessel.
Could be, yeah.
We're gonna have to need you to pass that tag, and he's like, I don't want to, because in season 1 he was involved in breaking out of prison, right, in that whole New Republic prison. So he knew he was going to get caught, and they actually were basically going to arrest him. They on the verge of destroying his ship. So I think this whole end scene was like, well, we're not going to destroy you. We just saved your ass, but we're not going to help you either.
It's
Because
like Batman at the end of Batman Begins. He's like, I don't have to kill you, but
I
I
don't
don't have to save you.
Yeah.
oh,
It's exactly
It's
the same.
exactly that. Yeah.
Christopher Nolan going on here. It was interesting seeing Dave Filoni, because this is his longest and most kind of clearest cameo he's ever done in Star Wars, in my opinion. And he's if you guys didn't know, he's like a rabid fan of wolves. Like, he just puts as many, that's his spirit animal, and he tries to incorporate that into every show he does. And his name in this one was Wolf. If you look at the subtitles, that was his call sign. So yeah, it's a full fan service.
I think his full name is Trapper Wolf, but they call him Wolf. Yeah.
What a name.
Pedo name.
Yeah. I got one more sort of trivia. Apparently this was not the first time you see the passenger, the frog lady. She was in an episode in season 1, the chapter 5, The Gunslinger. Apparently she was sitting in Mos Eisley Cantina.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for a long time for that lift, hey?
Yeah. So I loved all the dogfighting, space travel, flight travel kind of stuff they showed. It was really well done. There's a reference to like the trench run as well when they went into that little ravine. They're running through it.
Just as I think when the spider started to demolish the ship and like its own hook speed the ship, I think they were trying to signal the mortality of the ship, because I think at that point you could tell I don't think the ship's going to last the season.
Yeah.
Which is what they
The
were sort
ship
of
goes through
hinting.
some shit, doesn't it?
And then
Oh, yeah.
at the end of the episode, you could see, okay, the ship is, I don't know what's going to happen to the ship, but they either get it repaired really well or something happens. So
Yeah.
it's sort of foreshadowing.
Well, they do end up getting it slightly repaired and then repaired pretty well, and then it's...
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Just gets wasted.
All right. Episode 3, Chapter 11. This is The Heiress, directed by...
Is this the Rick Fumiyaga one?
No. And that's not his name. Anyway.
Just kidding.
Something like that.
We have editing software, it's fine.
No, I can't remember. Deborah Chow?
No, she doesn't direct lines.
No, I can't remember this
It's
one.
your favourite.
Is this,
It's my favourite.
Yeah.
the redhead, the lady with red hair,
Oh, it's Bryce Dallas Howard. Did she
Yes.
do another one
Yeah.
in this
Yeah,
one?
Bryce
Oh,
Dallas
okay,
Howard.
yeah.
What was this one about again?
Is this the one with the Bo-Katan?
Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
This is
yeah.
when they arrive at this kind of water. Yeah, they land on this fishing dock planet, and they meet like Quarrens and Mon Calamari all on the surface, essentially just to deliver the eggs to the husband. And they meet the Bo-Katan and her.
This is another one of these, I've got information for you, but do something for me first episodes.
Don't they end up with pirates or something? There's like the part with pirates, how they...
the dad, basically the husband of the passenger,
Oh, yeah, and then they
leads the Mandalorian to these people who he thinks knows the Mandalorians,
Yeah.
and then they end up just being Mandalorian trappers
And they kick Baby Yoda into this,
into this pit to sort of into this I don't know what
it's like a
what
well,
animal.
they go out to the ocean and they kick him into this thing.
It's like a kraken kind of creature in the sea. And then,
Yeah.
It's stored in the stowing compartment.
Yeah.
Trapping it. Din Djarin falls right in to try and save Baby Yoda, and they just trap him. The whole idea was to basically kill him, get his armor.
Luckily, the other Mandalorians turned up.
Bo-Katan
But they see him, right? They see him on the...
When they first arrive,
Yeah.
so you see Cosca Reeves, Sasha Banks' character, kind of just with a hood, observing them land, just then fading into the darkness. And then later on, they show up in their full armor, and they kick ass, completely obliterate these Korans and rescue the Mandalorian and bring him out. Then that's the introduction of Bo-Katan to the series.
And then you also find out in this episode that she's looking for the Darksaber.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which she has at one point in Clone. I haven't seen it, but in Clone Wars, I think she has it at one point. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So this is weaving a very long thread back from Clone Wars, going through Rebels, and then now finally through the other end of the original trilogy. So I think we'll definitely have a chance to talk about the origins and where that leads up to here. Yeah.
You're also Din Djarin, like Pedro Pascal's character, gets like the first revelation that not all Mandalorians are like him with the helmet, like with as being part of the Watch. Like,
Correct.
Which he was completely unaware of.
Yeah. I think he, I think that means that he's never been to Mandalore. Like, he's always been raised on the Outer Rim where the Watch was. He's never like been in contact with other Mandalorians because that was a shock to him.
We don't yet know if he has or has not been to Mandalore. All that we know is that he was never made aware of other houses, other clans. He was raised in that.
It's only the Watch that does that. Every other Mandalorian that was raised normally or like not through the Watch remove the helmet. So if you go to Mandalore, it's not only the Watch overlooking Mandalore at the moment.
So there are. So here's the thing about Mandalore. There's so many different houses, and so houses are the top level, and then clans are ones that align themselves with houses.
Yeah, subdivision.
There are quite a lot of clans and quite a lot of houses, and they're not all on Mandalore. So Mandalore is not just the planet; it's the system. So Concordia, all the other moons. There's some other kind of planets that technically are close to Mandalore. My thinking is that there are different houses that could have been part of either. So, for example, there was one house called Death Watch, and that was actually where Bo-Katan came from in the Clone Wars. That was her house. That lineage of Death Watch was directly from like Vizsla, which is one of the original Mandalorian knights or whatnot. Yeah. So I'm thinking, he didn't know about other houses, obviously. I don't think he knows his history. There's a chance he could have been to Mandalore. We don't really know, but like you said, this is the first time that's when the worlds collide. He finally understands. He meets other people, and like in the next second, he's like, well, these people are calling him a religious zealot for never taking off his mask. So it's like, there's only one way, the way of the Mandalore, and he flies off like.
They follow him anyway. So is Mandalore like destroyed, or is it the planet doesn't exist anymore? It exists, but it's basically uninhabited.
What's suggested is, when you see it in Clone Wars, Mandalore is mostly desolate, dry wasteland, except for its capital city of Sundari, which is like encapsulated in this massive dome, like one of those like environmental shielding domes. And inside the city, it's still thriving.
Like Wakanda.
Yeah, exactly. So it suggests, and it was suggested that once upon a time, Mandalore had trees and rivers and everything, but due to environmental effects and war and continuous war, it got destroyed. But the planet, when I say destroyed, the planet's still there. There's still, technically there should still be a city and multiple different cities around the planet, but it's desolate. It was glassed by different factions. And it's hinted that after the Empire takes occupation, after the events of the original trilogy, that it's uninhabitable. So we don't actually know what the situation of Mandalore or Concordia or the moons surrounding it or what it's like. We just know that it's not in a good place to be right now.
So what happens at the end of this episode again? So
there's nothing much. It's like an Imperial, not a starship, something smaller than that. An Imperial ship.
An Imperial cruiser, I think.
Cruiser, yeah. It's got some weapons on it, and Bo-Katan just wants it. So they storm the ship, and then they end up. Bo-Katan wants the ship, but then the Mandalorian has to crash it in the end.
Bo-Katan's pretty incessant on finding out where Moff Gideon is.
Yep. Which she asks some dude at the end, but he doesn't know.
Yeah. I think she asks where is Moff Gideon? Oh, where's the Darksaber or something?
She says, where's Moff Gideon?
Yeah.
She says, does he still have it?
Does he still have it? Yeah. And then the guy's like, I think you know the answer to that or something.
Yeah.
I thought that scene was done really well. I liked how the Imperial guy was like trying to crash the ship before they could get to the cargo. Yeah. I was like, that shows the will of some of those officers. Like,
and it kills the other two guys as well.
Yeah, it's like very suicidal. Like,
they really know how to cast really good Imperial captains in this. Like every Imperial captain or general or person in command of a ship has been cast perfectly. Even in the sequel, Last Jedi, the dude who was in charge of that massive Imperial Star Destroyer. I don't know how they cast these guys. They nail them every single time.
It's always like a Caucasian, like old white guy with like slightly silver hair.
Yes. With a pretty accent.
That's the description of the character.
And we see the captain is actually one of the actors in, I forgot his name, but he was one of the dwarves in The Hobbit. I think it was Ori or Nori, one of those two. Yeah, he's a well-known Irish actor, but I can't remember his name off my head.
Just got a couple of trivia on this episode. So Bryce Dallas Howard, who was the director, there's a scene in this where the Razor Crest is re-entering into Trask. And apparently that was a tribute to Apollo 13, which was directed by her father, Ron Howard.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. Interesting. Katie Sackhoff. So she's returned. I think she's the only one that's actually playing a character that she voiced in live action as well.
Yeah.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
So she voiced the original character in Clone Wars and Rebels, and so she's made it back. I think she's the only one. Before we move on, I might talk quickly about the Darksaber, where it was last we saw it.
Yeah.
So last time we saw the Darksaber, it was in the hands of Bo-Katan, actually. So in Rebels, it was given to her. Yeah. Rebels takes place right before the original trilogy. Something happened in the original trilogy, and now she's after it again. So that kind of sets up a hint. Well, what happened? Did she lose it? Was it taken from her? I think it suggested that it was taken from her. And for those who've watched the Clone Wars, the idea is that Darksaber changes hands through combat to the death, basically. So the first time we ever see
like
it, it's in the
Elder Wand.
Like the Elder Wand, yes. It's yeah. It was kind of funny seeing like Bo-Katan calling Din Djarin a bit of a religious zealot for not taking off his mask. Then it's like, well, yeah, this Darksaber passes hands through combat, so that's the only way you can be taken.
Didn't she get you just told me it got given to her?
Okay,
in Rebels. So
here's what happened. Clone Wars. It was the first time you see it. Pre-Vizsla, leader of Death Watch, wields the Darksaber, just brings it out and says, "This was taken from the Jedi Temple thousands of years ago. My people have reclaimed it. It's a symbol of power." He uses it to cause all kinds of destruction. He eventually gets massacred by Darth Maul, in the Clone Wars. Darth Maul takes control of the Darksaber. We don't see it again until Rebels, where Darth Maul makes a reappearance, and it's in a cave on Dathomir, which is Darth Maul's home planet. Now, one of the Mandalorian characters in Rebels picks this up when she finds it in the cave. She just picks it up because it's been abandoned. And this is Sabine Wren of Clan Wren. She picks up the Darksaber, trains with it, actually learns to use it, eventually realizes she's not destined to lead the Mandalorian, so she gives it to Bo-Katan. Because she's the rightful ruler. That's therefore the episode's name, the Heiress.
So technically, Bo-Katan should have killed Sabine to take the Darksaber then.
This is where the rules are a little bit muddy. Because Sabine didn't acquire the Darksaber through combat, because she found it after it was abandoned, Bo-Katan was more willing to take it. So Dave Filoni's comments on this were, Sabine didn't have to fight to get it, so Bo-Katan accepted it without having to fight her. That's the way we see her last. Now she's really kind of looking for it and just kind of desperate to get it back. So a lot of theories are that maybe she tried to rule. The idea is that the person with the Darksaber has the right to rule Mandalore. Maybe she tried to rule Mandalore with the Darksaber. People called her a pretender because she didn't win it through combat. And her rule was challenged, and somehow she lost it through actual combat to Moff Gideon or someone in the Empire. And now she's so determined to get it back in the right way that it's kind of a driving force in this episode.
Another question. So Darksaber, say if someone drops it and someone picks it up and they start using it, it'll still work, right? It's not like it's not going to...
So
it's more of like a...
Symbolic.
Symbolic.
It's just a lightsaber. It's a lightsaber that was made by the first Mandalorian Jedi.
So it's not like you have to earn it for it to work for you.
So in this regard, it is not like the older one. Its power is absolute regardless. The story behind it, or the power that gives you to rule the country, is different. It was created by Tar Vizsla in the Old Republic, the first Mandalorian Jedi Knight, and was taken by the Jedi. And there's the neat little animation in Rebels that explains this. Jedi reclaimed it, but it wasn't actually theirs. Tar Vizsla made this out of Beskar. So the Mandalorians fought the Jedi, took over the blade, and ever since that point, it became a symbol of power.
So it's more like an honor thing, like you have to sort of gain the right to wield it.
I guess in a way it's more powerful as a symbol than it is as a weapon.
Exactly.
Just one thing. I think this turned me off from Bo-Katan's character. The fact that she just changes the deal that she had with Mandal in the last minute. And then she just says, arbitrarily, this is the way the man, no, it's not.
Yeah, you can't just say that every time.
That's not a justification for just, reneging your bargain with someone, and then it's saying, "Now I'm changing the deal.
This is
you have
the
to do
way.
this for us now. Then I'll give you the information." Like,
No.
I mean,
When did you change the deal?
so the first deal was to to help them get onto the ship, or to help them
I think to stop the ship.
to stop
No,
the ship.
actually help them take the ship because
Take
she's
the
going to
ship,
use
yeah.
the ship to retake Mandalore. Yeah.
And then no. The first bargain was to get the weapons, and then she decides to get the ship.
Yeah.
And then that's when she changes the bargain, and then she says, "No, I want the ship." And then
then
Din Djarin
Mandalorian's
says,
like, yeah.
"Oh wait, no, that wasn't part of the bargain. I hoped you give me the information." And then he says, "No, I want the ship. You're going to help me." And then,
And then she's like, "This is
otherwise,
the
like,
way." Yeah.
and then that just from then on, I just hated her character. There's nothing she could do that could redeem her. I just hated her from then on. That was it.
This is consistent with her character though. So her character in the Clone Wars, she's Pre Vizsla's right hand woman in Death Watch. They are a reckless group of terrorists in Clone Wars. They kill, they maim, they do whatever they justify the means for the end, right? So her character in that goes through a little bit of an evolution where she stops being a selfish prick and actually starts caring about her people. Her character in this is surprisingly consistent. She's still a bit of a dick. She's still a bit of a brash kind of ruler who doesn't know how she's gonna get there. So I think they were trying to get that across. If they made her a purely just character, that would have been like, oh, what happened to her? You know?
That's too much.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Episode 4, Chapter 12, The Siege. Who's the director of it?
I accidentally wrote it off your sheet, but I knew it as well. I knew it.
Sure,
it was
sure.
Carl Weathers. Yeah, I knew
Carl
it.
Weathers.
Yeah.
Carl Weathers, yeah. Who's
Who's
also
in this episode? Yeah.
features in this episode. So what was this one?
This is the one where, surprise, surprise, he needs to go somewhere to get something.
Yeah. And then he needs to help someone to
To
get
get
something
it.
else.
Yeah. So he goes back to get his ship fixed, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's the reason.
Yeah.
it
He
stops,
goes, yeah. And then
Well,
like,
he tries to get Baby Yoda to help him, right? And then Yoda's in
Oh yeah, that
little-
tunnel. Put
yeah,
the blue
little
wire
tunnel
in
is-
the red wire. The blue red wire where the blue wire was. And
It
then
gets
just
electrocuted.
it's very Groot.
Yeah, baby. I was thinking
Baby
Baby
Groot,
Groot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he goes to get his ship fixed, and the Carl Weathers is like, "Hey, while you're getting your ship fixed, go help us do this shit."
And Baby Yoda goes to school.
Yeah,
And eats blue
it's blue
cookies.
macaroons.
Yeah.
The macaroons.
I think the
it's
macaroons, yeah, macaroons,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that was really cool seeing that school environment. It was like, well, you never really see kids that much in Star Wars unless they're being massacred. So it's like,
or eaten.
Or eaten, yeah.
it was nice. It was nice seeing them, in a cool school environment. You know, just learning about the New Republic and whatnot. And there's like
I wonder why they sit Baby Yoda in that. Like, he's a baby, right?
yeah, but he's 54 years old.
Yeah.
This dude's getting old. Like,
So what is this like mental capacity like 8 or something, or like how does that
so
work?
if you look at Master Yoda was 900 years old at the time of Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And he spoke backwards too. He obviously never got a proper education. It's probably a good thing they're putting Baby Yoda on this.
Yeah, like the way I thought of it was maybe divide the age by 10 or 15 and you get Baby Yoda's age as being actually around 5 or 3 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like
Maybe
yeah,
like
that,
kindergarten? Yeah.
Yeah, because he can't understand speech. Oh, he can bit.
sort of.
He can't
He
talk.
can't talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he can recognize his name when it's called.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can't
Yeah.
talk though. So he's, human age is probably like less than 2.
But from what we learn in literally the next episode, it's hinted that maybe he actually did learn more than we think. Or was
Next
instructed
episode.
more than we think. Yeah, more than we know.
We got sidetracked a bit there. So
Yeah.
after that,
Oh, yeah, he leaves him at school and then they go on this mission to...
Yeah, they just destroy this Imperial base. That's basically it.
but
Yeah.
they
Mining
get some
facility
new
or something.
they get some new information from that the base, right? About it's a testing center, not
Oh
a
yeah.
Oh, yeah. They find out they're
Yeah.
like cloning, or that they use Baby Yoda's blood for something.
So this is where you actually the kind of the curtains open as to why they needed Baby Yoda in the first place. The Doctor and the original Imperial kind of general were looking to do some weird experiments, which was still kind of vague in this episode. They weren't really detailed, but they said the word M count, which is
Metachlorine.
midichlorian count, going right back to
Phantom
the prequels.
Menace.
Back to Menace, yes.
Yeah.
So they definitely were doing some weird black magic fuckery.
He mentions, the scientist mentions that the hosts keep dying. So I think what they're trying to do, and I think it's implied, is that they're trying to create force-sensitive beings.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
they're trying
Manufacture
to...
them pretty much.
Yeah, or they're trying to find a way to imbibe force sensitivity in someone. So I think what Moff Gideon is trying to do is trying to make himself force sensitive to then lead the New Order, which is why he has the Darksaber and he's so obsessed with...
Do you think it was do you think it was for him? Because I feel like if
That'd make
they're doing
sense.
like blood testing, they maybe were trying to breed entirely new organisms to create.
Well, for
Maybe
me,
he was trying to perfect it. So
So when it gets to him,
yeah.
the reason I say it's for him is because the way he talks about Baby Yoda being the most important thing to him, I just don't see him doing that to create a Sith to then serve under. He seems the kind of guy to want to be able to do that himself. So that's what I think too.
And there's some really interesting implications this puts for the sequel trilogy and what was Snoke and how that related to Palpatine. Some interesting fan theories that this was the original kind of line of research that led to Snoke being one of the clones that was developed as part of Palpatine's grand plan. Because it turned out he was a clone, apparently. That could have started here.
I kind of hope it doesn't, though. I want this to be separate.
I actually have a question. This is more just in general Star Wars lore. So, did the Sith, way down the line, did they create the Empire, or did the Empire start and then the Sith decided to just tag along and help them out? How did they actually come together?
I'm not sure about the Old Republic, but the first notion of the Empire was all from Palpatine.
Okay.
So he started the Empire.
Right.
It's a different thing when we get to the sequel trilogy 25 down. It's called something else.
Yeah.
It's a new idea. But it wasn't a Sith idea by design. I think it was Palpatine's idea. It was his kind of machination of what he thought order and control would look like. So the idea of the Sith was never to actually, create government. That's a very complicated process, the politics and government. Sith idea was basically dominate the light side of the Force, right? Spread the Sith teachings as far as you can, build a Sith temple wherever you like. It was very archaic, old disciple-y. And the rule of two prevented them from creating an academy for the Sith. It was more so just leverage your rule over people.
I guess sort of saw it all anyway in Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, I completely forgot that.
Yeah. You kind of see it, especially in the Clone Wars, Darth Maul's influence over the crime syndicates. That was kind of the underground influence that the Sith had in the Old Republic as well as the current age. So, the Empire is something very new and something that was much more powerful than previous situations.
Okay, and at the end of this episode, I think, there's that revelation that they're basically looking for Baby Yoda's blood again, right?
Yeah.
They need it again. So then the Mandalorian rushes back and then he kind of gets his ship and flies off, right?
Because he's afraid.
He jetpacks back.
Yeah.
But what he doesn't realize is that the engineers who work to fix his ship have
put a tracker on it or something.
put some sort of tracker. Like a homing beacon inside, which he doesn't realize.
One other thing, so Cara Dune's character, I think it's the first time we sort of go into her origins, and she says that she's from Alderaan, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, which was destroyed
In A New Hope.
in New Hope.
In New Hope.
So 9 years.
So 9 years ago. But before then, she was shock trooper for the rebellion. This happened, and I think from what she said in season 1, she continued doing that, but then she eventually fell out, just went into freelance work as a mercenary, hunting down Imperials. One thing I found hilarious about this was Paul Sun-Hyun's character comes up and goes, "You're from Alderaan. Did you lose anyone?" I'm like, her planet was blown. She lost everything. How could you ask that question? Did you lose anyone? It's like saying, "Oh, you're on the dual station on the Death Star. Did you lose any comrades?" Like, dude, everyone was on that planet when it blew up.
Well, they're not lost. They're just dead. She knows where they are.
Yeah, they're one with the Force. I could have sworn, that was a bit of an interesting moment for me. I'm like, come on, he's got to have known. He was a pilot for the New Republic. He would have been there for the whole Battle of Yavin and stuff.
He probably did know, and he just wanted to ask that just for the kicks. Hey, did you
Just rub salt in the wound. We're in the second half of the season now, so episode 5, this chapter 13, The Jedi.
The Jedi.
Who was this directed by?
This was Dave Filoni.
Dave.
It was, and it was also written by him. So this was when things started to get really interesting for me because it started to bring back. This is the first time one of the first times we've seen Jedi, like an actual Jedi in this series.
Correct.
Yeah,
The first time.
yeah, first time. Yeah, and a popular character from Clone Wars.
Well, I guess you could argue that she's no longer a Jedi, but
Yeah.
we get what you mean, though.
But a very long-awaited character appearance. One that's been, I think, hyped, rumored, and then finally confirmed through the casting.
So she's going back. So she's not a Jedi because she.
Yeah. You watch the Clone Wars and you find out why. We actually forgot to mention in episode 3 that Bo-Katan does mention to find Ahsoka Tano on the planet.
That's the thread
that's the
that is
thread that
laid.
leads to it,
Yeah. She even mentions the planet, I'm guessing.
She does,
Yeah, she mentions the planet. So in Clone Wars, you'll see it. Do you want me to tell you about that? Is that fine? Yeah. So what happens is basically she gets framed for the bombing of the Jedi Temple by one of her close friends. And she ends up being persecuted by the Jedi Council and like chased and stuff, and she's trying to plead her innocence, but they're constantly trying to like half of them are convinced that she's the one who did it. Mace Windu especially, he's like pushing it a lot, and even Anakin can't really stop them from pursuing and like convicting her of that act. And eventually you find out it's not her, it's like one of her friends that framed her. Yeah. But she becomes very disillusioned with the way that everything was handled. And she eventually, like, that leads to her renouncing the Jedi Order and then leaving, not on like bad terms where she becomes a Sith, but she just leaves and she's no longer considered like a Jedi, or she no longer considers herself.
But she's still like a Force sense.
Yeah. But she was still raised in the Jedi temple, but it was that experience of, not having the back of the Jedi who she grew up with. Like, Anakin was the only one who really kind of vouched for her. Right until the end. He even actually found the person responsible, brought her in chains kind of, and said, she's innocent, this is the real person. And the Jedi Council immediately the way they reacted to this was, oh, sorry, Ahsoka, I guess this was your great test. This was your test for becoming a Jedi Knight. And Mace Windu was like, the Force works in mysterious ways. And Ahsoka's just like, bitch, please.
You bastard.
This whole time, you never gave me the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. And it was a big moment of hypocrisy. Because like the Jedi, when they look at Padawans, they can read their mind. They can tell what they're thinking. They interrogate them to get them to the order, right? So it's like they know what they're thinking, and they couldn't tell that she was telling the truth.
So was Yoda involved in all this?
Yoda was observing the whole process. He was very neutral. He was like, well, the evidence is this. Ahsoka, can you vouch that you are innocent?
They all wanted a trial, basically. Ahsoka didn't want to be part of a trial. Like, she wanted to plead her innocence. Even Anakin at the start was like, let's do the trial, we'll get you innocent. And she didn't want to do that at all. Because it was just like pure persecution on her.
So in that episode, there's one moment where she's accused of the crime, not yet guilty, right? There's still a process to be followed. She gets imprisoned just as a bail type of thing, just in case. Someone breaks open the main entry of the prison, takes out all the guards, leaves the keys right in front of the door for Ahsoka to find. And Ahsoka, being taught by Anakin, has always got that rebellious side, or always challenge the rules, always challenge the status quo, follow your own kind of path. So she escapes, even though she's innocent. And that is the final act that kind of convinces everyone. That episode also is the introduction of Governor Tarkin, which eventually becomes Moff Tarkin in A New Hope. And his character is very much like a prosecutor for the case, saying if she was innocent, why did she run? If she was innocent, why did she escape and kill all those guards? He's like, I didn't kill any guards. And so it basically leads, the writing was really well done to kind of lead us down the track to say, she's innocent, we know that. But the Jedi Council, for them, this investigation, for them, instead of standing behind her, they kind of looked at the evidence and said, well, it doesn't look good. And Yoda was actually one of the characters who was like, this is really, the dark side of the Force shrouds this whole thing. This is really not normal. But I think the whole process, like you said, at the end of the day, she was disillusioned at it. She walked away.
I think she runs away because she's scared, mostly. Like, when the opportunity came...
She wasn't scared. No, you're talking about in the prison or the Order?
No, the prison.
Oh, yeah. The prison, she was scared.
Yeah, she's like afraid of what's going to happen, so she runs away at that point. And then, so she leaves Jedi Order, and then in Rebels, when you see her again for the first time, she's no longer has the blue, but she's got the, like, yellow-orange kind of lightsabers, and it's meant to show that she's not really a grey Jedi, that's a different thing, but she's, like, no longer a Jedi, she's just a Force-sensitive user who uses lightsabers to fight.
I think they are the same, they're white, they're the same lightsaber she has.
They're both white, I think.
They're both white, yeah, but...
They're both white.
In Clone Wars...
It was green, yeah.
It's like... I forgot what the color was, but it's different. Like, she changes the color between Clone Wars and Rebels, and then in Rebels and now it's the same, basically.
So her actual, so when you watch the 7th season of Clone Wars, she actually loses those lightsabers altogether.
Yeah,
and the ones you see in Rebels are the ones that she's built herself.
And in this, what color was her lightsaber?
In this episode,
yeah.
White. Yeah,
it's like white.
They're both,
yeah.
So that referenced the style of the ones in Rebels. If you look at the ones in Rebels, the hilts are reminiscent of katanas. And in this one, they actually did bring that to fruition.
And is one short, one long?
Yeah, so
they're different lightsabers.
Yeah. So
like
one,
the actual blade hilt, or the
blade hilt is a tanto. So it's a tanto blade. One is a short one. It's a reference.
And like
it's a reference to actual samurai sword blades. So one of them is a full size katana like sword. The other one's like a tanto blade, which is shorter. So she dual wields and we see a lot of that kind of Japanese samurai influence in this episode. I think we can speak more into Dave Filoni's direction choices, but it's very, very reminiscent of Akira Kurosawa's films. And I think this was the kind of episode for him that he really took it upon himself to bring everything he wanted to do in an episode and bring it all into fruition.
Even that setting, the forest-like setting, was very reminiscent of those films. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good scene.
Your Jimbo, which is, I think that was even set in a very similar setting, like a fortress in a forest. So this was like a frame. If you look at your Jimbo, watch that film, even frame for frame, he kind of wanted to replicate that same feeling of the lone warrior facing off against the mercenaries. So that was, that was really well done.
I guess the most important thing in this episode is you do find out Baby Yoda's name, Grogu. And you find out about his backstory as well. This is when I guess the season starts really unraveling from this point. You start finding out a lot more about his background and what the Mandalorian has to do next and all of that as well. There is one line she says she says it in the middle and then towards the end she says something similar as well. But she says she senses much fear in Grogu, and that's something similar to what Yoda says to Anakin, I think. So I don't know if that means anything in the future or we'll have to see, but... Yeah.
Possibly.
This is really interesting.
So when she sat there for like just hours on end reading through his thoughts, I think she determined that, she found out his name. She also found out that Grogu was actually trained at the Jedi Temple from infancy and was somehow brought out of the temple before Order 66. But I think he may have witnessed some of it. That's what may have given reason to his fear.
I guess what happens at the end, they end up freeing the prisoners in this... What is this thing? Is it like...
It's like a little town.
Yeah.
I think it's a township and under the control of the magistrate.
Dictatorship of this one lady.
Essentially being tortured,
But it's a really good end scene because like the fight's really good.
Oh yeah, amazing fight.
And it sort of leads, like as soon as that spear comes out, I was like, oh, this is setting up for his final battle with Moff Gideon with the Darksaber because it's Beskar steel.
The magistrate
And it's
staff,
like, that was sick. That was
and she even mentions it's a purer form of Beskar than normal. It's extremely pure. And you can see that the moment she kind of just strikes it on the ground, it's got that resonance that comes out of it. And it just gives that like feeling of, wow, this is going to be some serious shit.
Yeah.
And then he like tests it out by tapping it on his own armor, like Beskar and Beskar, and then it has that ring. That's so cool.
He knows.
Yeah. Actually, even before this fight, when Din Djarin first encounters Ahsoka in the forest, she comes out with a lightsaber and strikes Din. It's the first time you see that Beskar is actually resistant to lightsaber hit. Even the ones that he got forged, quite resistant. His gauntlets were resistant. They didn't go through at all, which is a good setup towards the whole rest of the season.
And then that reveal at the end of the episode where Ahsoka basically beats her and she's like, where's your master? Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Grand Admiral Thrawn. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, big shock.
But once again, this is kind of like a backdoor pilot to another series. Yeah.
Kind of.
I do reckon Thrawn's going to show up in The Mandalorian though.
I don't think so.
You reckon?
I think he'll show up in
Damn
Ahsoka's show. Because Ahsoka's doing her own TV show, so I think he'll be linked to that.
So given that this was directed by Dave Filoni and he was like really, really closely directly involved with Rebels. So Thrawn is obviously the last time we see him is introduced into the season 3 and 4 of Star Wars Rebels. Comes in, he's a character from Legends, for those who haven't known the Timothy Zahn's original novels that followed the original trilogy back in the 80s. So Thrawn comes back in Rebels, has quite a significant storyline, and of course in Rebels we are introduced to another Jedi character. So we're introduced to Kanan Jarrus, and he's the master, and we're introduced to Ezra Bridger, who is the kid, the apprentice. When Ahsoka name dropped Thrawn, my first thought was, okay, if Thrawn's in this universe, Ezra's in this universe. At the end of Rebels, Ezra and Thrawn's fates are tied together. It's not really clear if they're alive or dead at the end. All we know is that their fates are tied. So we didn't know if they were still alive, if they were somewhere, they had disappeared, whatnot, whatever. So when if she's implying that Thrawn is alive, it means that that's got heavy implications for this other character. I actually think he might appear in The Mandalorian, not in his own show, purely because the Ahsoka show has a lot of other things to focus on in terms of her own path. Her path and Thrawn's path in this one are kind of tied together. But I feel like she's got a lot more potential to move forward without having Thrawn as an enemy. He's much more imperial. He's like an actual military force to be reckoned with.
The way they said it is they're kind of setting up for like an Avengers like tie-in thing. They have like 5 different shows, and they want all of them to have a crossover event. Kind of like the CW shows, actually. Do you know how they have those crossover events? Yeah. So Thrawn might be the crossover event.
Possibly.
Right. Yeah. But I think he'll be in I think his main arc will be in the Ahsoka show. Yeah.
Well, was this the only sort of tie-in to another show? Or were there any other sort of references?
So the Bo-Katan's got a show coming.
Bo-Katan.
Boba Fett.
Boba Fett's got a show.
Yeah, that's what.
Timothy Oliphant's in a show with Cara Dune.
Oh,
So basically
that
all the
wasn't really,
characters
like-
in this
okay,
are
okay.
in their own show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the actual like purposeful tie-in was that one, the Thrawn one. Like the Marshal being there wasn't so much a tie-in as opposed to he's just being a character they're going to use.
But I guess they put his character in this so they can use
they can
it for
introduce
something,
him.
and
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah.
else.
Was
Yeah.
Bo-Katan getting her own show? I don't...
That the Rangers of the Old Republic or something?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Because I feel that would follow like the Rogue Squadron of the New Republic.
I think Bo-Katan is getting her own one. I don't know which one it is. Maybe not. Maybe she will be tied into Mandalorian
It
season
would make
3.
sense for it
yeah.
to be like Mandalorian because then
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
because her fights to reclaim Mandalore.
Yeah,
I would think
yeah.
she might actually stick to Mandalorian.
Maybe Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah.
And the
yeah.
Darksaber still was. Well, I guess we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, yeah.
that's still
It's,
kind of,
still we don't find out where it is at the end of this.
Okay, so Ahsoka basically tells Mandalorian and Baby Yoda to go to this other planet where he can communicate with other Jedi or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what happens. And then next episode, so chapter 14, The Tragedy. This is directed by...
Robert Rodriguez.
Yep. This is when we find out a bit more. Well, firstly, it's an introduction of Boba Fett, like formally an introduction of Boba Fett. And a lot of stuff happens in this episode, actually. Firstly, Grogu starts communicating thing on the rock. I don't know exactly what it does, but obviously
He's just doing
communicates.
the thing. He's
Yeah.
doing the thing. Yeah.
Obviously communicates with someone. We find out later who
He's trying to find where the
yeah.
frog lady is so he can eat more eggs.
Because he was really not happy leaving them as well. He's like, I want to stay.
Uber Eats.
Yeah.
He was pissed.
Galactic Uber Eats.
Jesus Christ, man. Uber Eats on babies.
Baby eats.
Just come to the green frog lady. It's like someone's ordered your babies, man. I've got to say.
It's practically caviar. So.
But Boba Fett basically turns up because he knows that the Mandalorian has his armor, pretty much. The one they got from Cobb Van.
Actually, we just see the Slave One coming in. Slave One,
That's his ship, yeah.
yeah, the ship just comes in.
That was Dad's ship.
And I think everyone, the viewers know who it is, but Din Djarin's like, who the hell is this?
Yeah, he doesn't know. Yeah.
He doesn't know. And yeah, Boba Fett just comes right out.
And there's some pretty brutal action in this episode when he does. Firstly, before he gets the armor on, he's got the stick or whatever he uses, right?
That's it's the Gaddafi stick or the Gaffy stick, which
Yeah.
is what the Tusken Raiders wielded when they knocked Luke down from the speeder in A New Hope. And it's that weird club-like shaped thing. And it's an actual real life native Fijian war club, which is meant to punch holes in skulls with the full force of the weight. So you actually see
I think he certainly did that. With
punching
some
in the armor.
holes in stormtrooper armor,
Yeah.
like just absolutely obliterating their armor left, right, and center. Not just the heads, like everything.
Yeah, very violent.
Oh gosh,
Very good.
Tamura Morrison still has got it. He can fight like anything else.
He's got a potta. He's got a nice belly.
Yeah.
He
Nice
does.
center of gravity.
And who's his sidekick? What's her name?
She's in the first season.
Yeah.
What's
The
her name?
gunslinger.
She's
Yes.
the lady with the guts. She's got the
robotic
robot
insides.
guts. Yeah.
Yeah, Boba Fett apparently healed her and gave her some cybernetics to deal with the damage. But
Let's
she's
just call her robot gut lady.
She's the Imperial sharpshooter.
Fennec Shand.
Fennec
Shan.
Shand.
Yes.
Who plays her?
Ming Na.
Ming Na.
Ming-Na Wen. Yeah.
Ming-Na Wen. Yeah.
Karen obviously knows who this is.
She was. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't she? She's in like
Wait, can you
Agents of
name
S.H.I.E.L.D.?
one other thing that she
She's
was
in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. yeah.
Other than Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., what else was she in, though?
No idea. I've only seen her in Agents of
Mandalorian.
She was
In this,
the
yeah.
original voice of Mulan in the animated movie.
Oh, damn.
Wait, on
Oh,
that
yeah,
note,
yeah. That Ming Na, yeah.
China is actually
S.H.I.E.L.D. So it's a different Ming Na.
China is actually remaking their own Mulan. It's hilarious.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Star Wars.
Was she also the main leader in Altered Carbon of the humans, the Human Rebellion?
First season or second season? No, different
season.
person.
One interesting thing about this episode is that it's actually the first time they use a location from a video game series. So that whole temple stone pillar thing, straight out of Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah. Good setting.
Yeah.
It was very
Interesting
good.
setting. I don't
Looks
know what it
real.
was. It looked like it was some sort of like a force resonance beacon thing where you just put some force user in the middle, and yeah, he went straight into meditation.
Yeah.
If
yeah.
you
Well,
notice-
initially, you try, like nothing happens, right? But then he goes down and then comes back up and he's in that full meditation.
Yeah, if you actually notice when Din Djarin's walking around that place, you see like little blue butterflies flying around. It kind of like is like a living force is really concentrated in this area. It kind of gives that hint. So yeah, he's in full Zen mode, and there's a force field preventing, the Mandalorian from pulling the baby out once they're under attack from the Imperials. So it's interesting to see.
And this is the first we see of the is it Dark Troopers? Is that
Death
what they're
Troopers.
called?
Yeah.
Sorry, Dark Troopers.
Yeah.
So the mechanical, non-human stormtroopers that have jetpacks, very strong from the look of it in this episode.
Yes.
They don't do much though. They fly down, pick them up, and fly up. Like
Pretty much, yeah.
not very menacing.
So if he was still in that meditation state, would they have been able to grab him? Because
Probably not.
He tries and he
so.
can't.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Yeah,
probably
It's just convenient that he gets tired right at
Just
the time.
there.
Yeah.
Just there.
But yeah, in the meantime, while they're doing that, Boba Fett is fighting all these guys. Din Djarin takes over, tries to fight them back. Boba gets his Bhaskar armor back from the
Ship.
The thing I
Just
don't-
before it gets blown up.
yeah, exactly. And the thing
It
I
would have
don't-
survived though, right? Because it's Bhaskar.
Yeah, it would have.
Yeah.
And the thing I don't get is why does he always leave his door open? Like, why can't he just close his door?
It's because he needs a quick getaway. If he needs to run away quickly, he always has it open.
And he's very trusting of his neighbours.
He comes from Mandalore. It's a very peaceful
Very
planet.
peaceful planet, no crime. Yeah.
That as well. Why does he leave his jetpack on the floor? He just takes his jetpack off, and that's why he couldn't get a bit to
That
Yeah.
was a bit of a
time.
plot point, that
Like,
one.
Exactly. I'm
He
like,
takes
why
out
does
to
his-
he
take it
just
off
fly?
so he couldn't get there. Yeah.
Like that doesn't impede in his combat. That's actually useful for him. That actually helps him. Like what that just didn't make sense in terms of what a Mandalorian would do in that situation. But that was
The
really
only thing I can think of is the jetpack is quite heavy. The only reason he take it off is to improve his agility. Right?
No, he takes it off because Boba says to take it off because he doesn't want him flying away. He has him at gunpoint. Yeah, Fennec has him at gunpoint, and he's like, "If you want to do a deal, if you want to talk, first take your jetpack off." And he takes it off.
Okay, there's a reason.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
the
he tells him
story
to
point
take
was
it
that
off.
he
It
couldn't
would have
get
been
the
better
other-
if he put it back on.
She
Chase the
actually
Dark
said
Troopers.
take your jocks off, but he's her jetpack. Yeah. So, it was yeah.
There's an alternate version
The
where,
alternate
where
version.
she says jetpack and he
It's
takes his
on
jocks off.
Pornhub.
Yeah,
That version's
I
not
saw
on-
it last night.
It's not on Disney Plus. It's on another platform.
It's on another Plus platform. Yeah, so it would have been cooler if he put the jetpack back on, chased the Dark Troopers up, and then got into a fight with one of them and didn't make it.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been a bit more...
to set up the
Because it's already established that they're like pretty strong in like the later episodes. So it would have made sense if you couldn't fight them.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the focus on this one was just bringing Boba Fett back in the full glory of the suit, the weapons and systems, and you just see him completely destroying. Apparently, shooting someone while you're not looking at them is the new like sign that they're proficient in gunfighting.
We see him finally use his bloody rocket launcher on his jetpack
launcher.
too
Yes.
after so
Shoots
long.
down one of the convoys, and then he's like, "I was aiming for the other one," which is a direct callback to a Western film, one of the old school westerns.
Yeah.
In that same shot where like the main gunslinger tells the apprentice, like, "Oh yeah, I was aiming for the other guy," and it's like he shoots two guys off the
Well, it
horse.
worked out well for him because he hit that one and the other one
It landed on him. Yeah.
Yeah, just cascaded crash.
Anything else on this?
Then a tragic loss.
I guess
the Razor
you-
Crest.
Yes, and you find out that Boba Fett is a pretty honourable guy because he agrees to help find Baby Yoda again and help find Grogu again.
Yeah,
so,
it's the first time you see some sense of like honor system or honor code.
Unlike Bo-Katan.
It feels like a different character to the guy in the original trilogy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, it could be a different bloke, yeah.
Do you reckon? I thought in the original trilogy he had a contract with the Empire and he was going to fulfill it no matter what.
Well, yeah, he's a bounty hunter.
But also, he only has like 10 minutes of screen time, so what can we pull
Yeah.
off of a character that has 10 minutes of screen time?
He's
Yeah.
also in the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Shravan's
in the cartoon. He's in the cartoon. He's not in the actual thing.
Which is also where you see the Mando's pulse rifle for the first time. Is the
Yeah.
holiday special.
Yeah,
They bring
it's
it
in
out
the
for the
holiday special.
this one. No, but to address your question, Bhargav, about the whole loyalty, the bounty hunters' loyalties lie whoever's paying them.
Yeah, but he's still working for Jabba. Like, remember at the end of A New Hope when at the middle of A New Hope when Han first sees Jabba and he's like, "I'll get your money back." You see Boba there, right?
Yeah.
So he's obviously working for Jabba. And then at the end of 5, he's working for the Empire to get Han back to Jabba. So it's obviously like he's doing a lot of effort to fulfill that one contract.
True, but
So
it's
for
not
me-
like he's not like he's Imperial. He's being paid by the Empire, so that's why he's loyal.
But
to be
he's,
fair-
he's doing it. He's fulfilling the contract.
This is also another Mandalorian, and he obviously has some sense of code because he honors the fact that his father has the armor, therefore it rightfully should belong to him. And also, I feel like maybe not, but like coming out of a Sarlacc pit might have mellowed him out a bit, might have taken out some of that disloyal instinct, but who knows?
Possibly, yeah, because someone else.
Dave Filoni.
Start to value his life a bit more,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because I think given that he uses the Gaddafi stick, it's kind of hinted that's a Tusken Raider weapon, right? It's hinted maybe Tusken Raiders helped
him out.
Get him back on his feet. So, the goodwill of others brings out the goodwill in him. And we learned that Boba Fett is technically a Mandalorian, which was kind of retconned out after the original trilogy. They thought, in the prequels, he was like, okay, he's a clone. Jango Fett is just a bounty hunter, and Boba Fett was a clone. Somehow they came across Mandalorian armor, but now it's re-retconned to say that Jango Fett was actually a foundling who was trained in the ways of Mandalore and has Mandalorian Bhaskar armor, and because Boba Fett's a son, he's technically Mandalorian by foundling creed.
So we can get to this, we don't have time for this episode, but they also mentioned he's a Mandalorian in that episode, but then afterwards it gets contested that he's not a Mandalorian. And it gets brought back and forth a few times, so...
Doesn't he say that he's not... Like, he said he never said that he was a Mandalorian. I think that's what he said.
I think it was the implication, but then someone refuted it, and then it was...
I think Bo-Katan says something, right?
Bo-Katan says that you're not a Mandalorian.
Purely because of the voice. Because she recognizes the voice. That voice is the voice of all clones. So the moment she
you're
hears
a clone, not a Mandalorian.
But she doesn't understand. But if she applied the whole constant reasoning of that being a Mandalorian is not a blood thing, it's creed, then she realizes anyone can be a Mandalorian if they're inducted as a foundling. So that she's kind of forgetting that. She's saying, no, you're just a clone. Like, she kind of forgets her own technical teaching.
Is it at the end of this episode that the Mandalorian gives a warning to Moff?
Nah, it's at the end of the next episode.
But in this one, he starts getting help, right?
So this
Boba Fett joins.
Nah, the start. Yeah, Boba Fett joins, and then the next episode, he goes. He gets Bill Burr.
Yeah,
and then they go try and find.
Basically, he's Bill Burr.
He gets Bill Burr.
It's just Bill Burr in the Star Wars universe.
Mayfeld, but it's Bill Burr.
And they goes to try and find Moff Gideon's location.
Yes.
Yeah.
One interesting thing is when at the end of the episode of the tragedy, when Boba Fett's chasing this ship back, or the Dark Troopers back, and he kind of comes through the clouds and he sees the Jedi cruiser, the TIE fighters, and he's like, the Empire's back. And it's like, I don't know how, but they're back. You kind of get the first real feeling of, wow, this Empire was not all destroyed during the events of Battle of Endor. There was still so many remnants that Jedi cruisers were something of like the era of before the Empire. Somehow now they're using that hardware, so they are pretty damn resourceful, these people.
I think we can go to episode 7 now. So chapter 15, The Believer, directed by
Bill, but no, it's not. It's is this Favreau or Filoni?
Nah.
Oh, Rick Fumiyaga.
Yeah, so it's Fumi Famuyima.
Oh, it's close enough.
Rick Famuyima.
I'm pretty sure he's not Japanese.
Nah,
he's African American. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Cancel.
He's still a racist.
So we briefly sort of mentioned what happens in this episode. Anything in particular we want to talk about? I thought it was a good episode. You see Pedro Pascal for the first time this season.
Also, what a stupid machine that you just need. It needs to scan a face. Doesn't matter whose face it is.
Yeah,
it just needs to scan any face.
Yeah. Any face. Yeah,
any face. Yeah.
This was back in the Imperial kind of mess. I think that the reasoning for that is that the entrance point will have the actual security ID kind of checking unless you're a driver, and then this is just like a terminal.
Yeah, but why is it just any face though?
It's to stop droids from hacking in, right? And like downloading a ton of data at once.
But like,
but then again, wouldn't you just have Imperial faces? Like,
literally.
Yeah.
Because obviously security flaws in this because not the information I'm looking for. But I think everyone looked at this like some sort of secure terminal. It wasn't a secure terminal. It was just like it's like the machines in front of malls where you press to find directions. One of those things.
But why does it need to scan your face then?
unless they assume there's no one stupid enough to sneak into a base, so they don't need to encrypt it to any particular one. But then that is a security flaw.
It's also probably because it's like not just scan, take a photo. It's like when you go to a club at night and they want to take your photo, so they've got a record of who attended
it's
on
like
what
an
night.
input, post
So it's like
thing.
who attended.
Okay, yeah.
Then again, I guess it would work for a droid too. So I'm just
it would. Anyway, that's a bit of a plot hole.
Yeah.
That's like right in the middle of the episode when they try and they employ Miggs Mayfield. They get him out of prison.
Yep.
Yeah,
that was a cool scene. It was a
Yes.
cool scene seeing him there.
That's a cool scene. I love Bill
That
Burr
scene
in this episode
where they're sitting talking to Joe Chill. That's it's a good scene. Yeah.
Yeah, even before then, on the drive into the place, before shit goes down and they have to evade. That whole talk about Din Djarin has to get up in Stormtrooper get up, otherwise he's not going to get through this, and he ends up doing it. And then Mix Mayfield kind of asks him, well, everyone has their limits, and even you said at one point you can't take off your armor, but now you did. So is it that you can't take off your armor? Or you can't show your face because they're two separate things. That's a really interesting point. It's like there's always someone that you're willing to fight for to actually cross your you could say your
cross your lines or your boundaries.
Cross your lines or your boundaries, exactly. And this episode is partly, I don't know if the believer was meant to be referencing Din Djarin or it was meant to be referencing Migs Mayfield, but did a good job in kind of showing the human side of Din
He's
Djarin.
like captain of the Empire. He's the believer. He's the one who gets shot in the face.
Yeah, I think he believed that he did the wrong.
Does it get shot in the... Wait, does he get shot in the face?
I think it's like the
I
chest.
think it's
right
like
top.
the chest.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to do the whole Han Solo
Yeah, under the table. I didn't see
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
No, because
But he
he
just
genuinely
takes it out and
talks about
shoots him.
he genuinely talks about the Empire as if it's rising again.
No, he not just that, but it's a direct reference to Operation Cinder, which was one of the most brutal operations in Empire's history.
It was in Fallen Order.
Yeah, it was in Battlefront 2. Battlefront 2, sorry, not Fallen Order. Yeah, just a quick background. It's basically an initiative after Palpatine's death. It was a post-posthumous initiative by him to stamp out any idea of rebellion or defiance in the galaxy by targeting random Imperial strongholds and Rebel strongholds indiscriminately and kind of frying them with intense radiation from satellites just to create weather abnormalities like lightning storms, thunder, like tsunamis to wipe out entire populations over like a week just to create fear so people would fall back onto the Empire for order. And there was no planet that was spared in this Operation Cinder. Like, they had like 15 targets and one of them was Vardos, which is like an Imperial planet. The cities were all like raising Imperial kids, putting through academy. They were all loyal as hell. That was targeted for Operation Cinder just to create fear so that they would love the Empire more. And Burning Con, which is what Migs Mayfield references, is one of the other planets. Thousands of people died just in a couple of days. And he was obviously very impacted by that. I think Bill Burr did a magnificent job of just conveying that kind of trauma and just the horror of witnessing that, coming here and hearing this guy say like, oh, they all died as heroes. Like, no, you massacred them. Like, did they really like, want to be here? It felt like a bit of a Thor moment in Ragnarok.
And Mando is just like,
don't do it. Just don't.
Just don't.
It's like, I've never been this phased without my helmet.
An interesting thing that I heard someone else tell me, when Mando is with his helmet on, he still moves his whole body when he's looking side to side because he's so used to having the helmet on that he doesn't actually know how to move without his helmet off.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Like he does like a Batman kind of, moving his shoulders to move.
It's good.
You're right, actually. That's interesting.
The action scene was cool afterwards as well when they're escaping.
Yeah.
And like
good
Fennec
action.
and
And even the previous, like when they're coming into the actual facility with the pirates and
Very sick.
that was-
Yeah, and his armor's not impervious anymore, so he's like, you can see it breaking off as he's
over
like hiding.
distance.
If he did have that Bhaskar armor, he would 100% be dead by now. He just goes in and takes shots, man. He
You see how
doesn't give a shit.
complacent he's
Yeah, it's
gotten.
too confident.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit. He goes in, he runs into corridors, into open fire.
1 against 11, and he just doesn't care about the odds anymore. But
Yeah.
now he has to like actually remember those odds and the
And
fears.
it's funny you said pirates attacking the ship because they're actually the natives of the planet.
Yeah, it's not pirates.
And
They
it's the
say
first
it's
time-
pirates, but
it's
it's
the
not
first time you
pirates.
kind of see that from the Imperial's point of view, where they're just here to mine Rhydonium. Who are these pirates attacking? It's like these natives are trying to save their planet.
Yeah.
And Mando and
But the thing is, they're not trying to mine they're not trying to mine it, they're just trying to blow it up.
Yeah.
They're not trying to steal it.
Yeah, so the Empire is trying to mine it, and these guys are trying to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, but a pirate would steal the thing to take
Yeah.
it back. They're just trying to blow it up
Yeah.
to kill
That's
them.
got to be
Yeah.
the worst pirate I've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. They're either really bad pirates or...
But you have heard of them. And it's also when they come into the facility, like all the stormtroopers salute, and you kind of see that perspective of them being relished as heroes in the Empire for a second. Migs Mayfield obviously has mixed feelings of that coming down later, but yeah, that was a beautiful little character arc, and I think Bill Burr just knocked it out of the park with that one.
Very well done.
I guess the only thing I'll say about this episode is you really realize how much Mando cares about Grogu. So enough to take off his helmet. And when you see his face as well, you see that he's like actually deeply concerned and he wants to sort of really get Baby Yoda back. So I think that was that used Pedro Pascal's acting for the first time.
Absolutely. And I liked that. I liked how he didn't just take off his helmet immediately. He tried to scan it with his helmet on.
Yeah, and then he's like, "There's no choice.
There's no choice.
I've got
He
do
has to
this."
do this to save him.
Yeah.
And everything that Migs Mayfield said about, well, if you're doing it for who you care about, then it's worth it. Takes it off and he stays.
And even Bill Burr, he sees him obviously, but he's like, just pretend that I didn't see you. Like none of this happened.
Yeah, that was awesome. I didn't see anything, just put it back on. You had to do it. And that line at the very end of it, when Miggs Mayfield finally blows up the Rhydonium after like snapping it from the slave, and he's like, we all got to sleep at night. Yeah. Which really, back to the beginning where he's like, whatever you do, as long as you, can sleep at night, then that's something that really means a lot.
And then they obviously let him walk free at the end as well.
Oh, and the seismic charge scene when they're escaping from the thing and the two TIE fighters are behind him, and then drops a seismic charge and that silence.
The moment he was flying up, I'm like, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do this. Like, because it was memed to
Boba.
Boba Fett, like in the original Save On in Attack of the Clones. I was like, they're not doing it. They're totally... The moment the compartments opened, I could just feel like everyone in the internet was just kind of cheering on, and that whole... It was everything you want it to be, that whole sound.
And it's good because they're not just like shitting on like the prequels. They're actually like, they're saying like the prequels weren't bad. They just didn't do it in the right way. So there's things that were good that they're bringing into the Mandalorian, which I really liked.
I think it says more about us as fans. Like we're craving for like something. Even in the prequels, when that happened, it was cool, but it wasn't like amazing, But when it happened here, we were like, oh, they brought it back. That's so good. It's like, that's how desperate we've become after this. That's how bad 7, 8, 9 were. Or 8 and 9 were.
Even before, so it was a result of meme culture, like just taking these concepts of all these little funny moments from Attack of the Clones. Because Attack of the Clones wasn't the strongest film. It was it was the black sheep of the original Lucas Star Wars, right? So,
I guess, I mean, in probably in hindsight now, it's still bad. Don't get me wrong, it's still bad. But there's probably worse ones. Since then.
Absolutely. No, that was a total eargasm, and I would just rewind it to hear it again all the time.
Good choice of words. Moving on.
Yes. But at the end of this episode is when he sends the message out.
Yes, that's the one.
Goes all Liam Neeson on his ass.
Yeah. Completely, and it sort of mirrors what Moff says to him in season 1.
Yeah, correct. It's like the exact same thing.
Yes, but the sentence that made it for me was, what does he say? You don't know how much he means to me. That felt so much more powerful.
Exactly.
No idea how.
Because after he did what he did, now he realizes what's at stake, and it's like, I'm ready to do it.
This is basically a setup episode for the finale, but in itself, I thought it was actually a really good episode.
It was really good.
Let's talk about the shit that we want to talk about now.
Yep,
we're finally here, the finale. So
finally here.
Episode 8, Chapter 16, The Rescue, directed by mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
We told you his name, so you can say now.
As I said it the first time correctly, I'm going to say correctly on the first try again. Peyton Reed.
Peyton Reed, big episode, obviously. So we'll get into all the stuff at the end. But before all of that happens, basically they've devised this plan. One thing about this plan, it would have really helped if Boba Fett was on the ship, right? That could have helped him a bit.
Yeah, he was missing from the action. I think.
Could have helped. They wrote him to be in the air.
Yeah,
I think I understand why. They wrote him out of the scene.
Yeah, I reckon it would have definitely
too many
helped
people
him a bit.
I think there would just be too many people to kind of deal with. Yeah.
What would he have added, though, if you think about it? Because we saw that a Mandalorian is not necessarily going to be effective against a Death Trooper. So, like, at that scene, you really need to cut all the fat. And, like, if you think about it, what would Boba Fett have added?
Well, what was his purpose? What was the beginning of that episode? Didn't they try and get the Doctor?
That's right.
The Doctor.
Yeah, the Doctor.
And they intercepted the ship.
Start,
So that's where it was most useful, I felt.
Right.
Personally.
Did they extract him alive?
Yeah, he was alive.
It was a very cruel scene, actually. That guy, like, pointing the gun and, like, trying to taunt.
That was actually real chilling. The fact that
she shoots him, and I think she gets his ear as well. The Doctor's ear.
I think she.
But that stormtrooper where he was like, we had to destroy Alderaan. It was he was like saying we had to massacre all those billions of people, and at the same time he's like, you destroyed millions of people on the Death Star, and I'm like, millions died on the Death Star, billions died on Alderaan, and you did the first move, so it makes sense. But the way he was justifying that genocide was like, this guy's really
He was like
bad
laughing at it though. He was like taunting, like
actually
really rubbing it in.
And saying it to Cara Dune, who was from Alderaan. So he's like, say, you've lost all those people. It was needed. That was necessary. She just straight up wastes them. Like,
coming out to Boba Fett.
Yeah,
I mean, I see what you mean. Like, maybe might not have added any.
It would have been really cool to see him like kick ass.
I just think like this is a situation where you probably need
another
deck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Even if it was just flying around in case any air support came, I think it would have made sense to have.
They could get Tamara Morrison for the day. He had other commitments, like eating full Macca's meal by himself. Supersized.
What other stuff is he in? He was in Aquaman, right? Was he in Aquaman?
Yeah, it was in Aquaman. And it was his dad.
Anyway.
Probably voicing for Battlefront 3.
And he also voice acted in Republic Commandos, the video game, as the clones. That was actually Temuera Morrison's voice. And Battlefront, the original Battlefront 2.
2005, yeah.
Yeah, the 501st monologues. That was all Temuera Morrison's voice.
Basically, there are two teams here. Well, there's a team, and then there's Mando, pretty much.
So 2 teams.
Yeah. And then there is a confrontation between Mando and, which we talked about, well, we mentioned earlier. So Mando and Moff Gideon, where he earns the Darksaber, pretty much. But then there's that was
after the Dark Trooper encounter.
That was after the Dark Trooper encounter.
Yeah. So I think the initial plan was the infiltration team goes in, clears out all the stormtroopers, and while all that mess is done, Din Djarin just kind of infiltrates and goes in through. And the plan was, they know the Dark Troopers are going to be activated, but it takes something like 2 minutes for them to be fully loaded. By that time, Din Djarin's going to infiltrate, blow the airlock, flush them out. Now, he's a little bit late. One of them gets through the door before he's able to blow them out of the airlock. Comes through. The door's closed, preventing the other ones from coming through. Yeah, and it's a face-off.
One thing I didn't mention is the previous episode is actually the first episode in the whole series where you don't see Grogu. So he actually isn't featured in it at all.
At all, you're right. He's just on the ship.
When was the scene where you see Grogu messing around with those 2 stormtroopers?
That was
The finale.
previous.
Finale. Oh, was that the previous?
I think that was... No, that was when they first catch him, right? In the tragedy. Yeah.
No, that's this
No,
episode,
that's
I'm
the
pretty
finale.
sure.
That's the start of the finale.
Yeah, pretty sure
and
it's this episode.
he's like hitting everyone around, and then Moff Gideon puts cuffs on him.
That was a really interesting scene because I think that showed
Was that
potential.
this episode? Or?
It's this episode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was as they were getting the Doctor. I think it cut back to
Right.
Baby Yoda in that holding cell.
because Moff Gideon walks down to his cell, hears the screams, and then it's just Yoda, it's just Baby Yoda messing up
Wasting
with
him,
yeah,
yeah.
wasting
Like
him.
ragdolling and throwing
Yeah.
it around.
And I think it's all tired. He needs a nap.
Yeah.
But I was kind of a sad scene because he didn't. It just looked like he was in pain, trying to inflict pain on others. You know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like,
was just
I
scared.
think that was the first time you started to see that Baby Yoda, Grogu, has potential to sort of feed into that sort of emotion, his negative emotions, and sort of possibly go into the dark side. But I mean, not that extreme yet, but it was interesting.
And then he's just like bind him with those handcuffs.
Yeah.
And they shoot him, right?
The stun gun.
Stun,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, to stun him. And I'm like, why did they have baby-sized handcuffs? Like, they must know they're
They're probably
bad guys at this
adjustable.
point.
They're
No.
probably adjustable
The
handcuffs.
radius of them are locked, right?
Yeah,
You have
and
adult
just
size,
fold them
you
in.
have Wookiee size, you have fucking baby size. Like, you gotta know you're bad when you have baby-sized handcuffs.
They
Like,
manufactured it specifically for this purpose, obviously.
dude.
It's like
Moff
custom
Gideon
fit
just
to
has-
his hands.
Yeah.
Moff Gideon just has a range. Just keep it fast.
He just walks into his room, he's got all these different size handcuffs.
They would not be surprised.
And then the face-off between Mando and Moff, which was a good battle scene.
Wait, before we get there, so the Dark Trooper, right? When he's facing off against the Dark Trooper, it's the first time you see the Dark Trooper in action in combat. And I think Mando gets absolutely, close to being absolutely obliterated. You just see the Dark Trooper punching his helmet into the wall repeatedly. And I think I was expecting it to give at one point.
The helmet.
But the helmet, but it doesn't. It actually blows the wall back in. And he ends up using everything in his arsenal. Literally everything. His flamethrower, whistling birds,
His spear.
his spear.
Oh no, that's towards the end. Sorry,
That's towards the
when
end.
he kills
Before then, he tries everything else, and he just can't do any damage. And then at the very, very end, Bhaskar spear hits it to the vital points, finally takes it down. And yeah, you just see him kind of limping. And at that point, that's when he kind of flushes the airlock, then finds Moff Gideon.
That scene was kind of funny though, because the Doctor talks about how the Dark Troopers are like perfected for like the art of thing, and like the Dark Trooper that faces off with Mando doesn't take off his helmet; just keeps punching him, and it's like
It doesn't go for any other.
it
sort of
doesn't
route.
register
It just-
that that it's Beskar, and it's not going to go or give, and that you could just like take the helmet off
And then,
Tears
and
limbs
then
off.
just do what you were doing before.
That's the human element that they will adapt quicker, right? So the kind of a perfect.
But that's why it's funny. It's like
It's funny you were saying it was
we
perfect.
removed the final flaw, and it's like you
the
made it
human
worse.
suit.
so I wonder what happened to this technology, because Force Awakens is after this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
after it. Yeah.
But we do see kind of droids in season 1, Republic side droids, defending that prison, right? So it's like in that episode where, the first episode where you see Bill Burr and Natalie Tennant and all of them take on the roles of that prison gang trying to break out their own member from the high security
Rebel prison. The
And,
Rebel
and you
Alliance
see
prison.
security droids working in that prison barge.
Yeah, but we don't see Dark Troopers in The Force Awakens.
True. But I like the whole idea of droids being used as some sort of military enforcement.
Yeah.
It's the first time we see it on the dark side.
There's droids.
So there is a big reveal. Someone turns up. So let's set it up. So they're basically in this, it's the control,
The
right?
cockpit, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Helm.
cockpit
Yeah,
of
the
the
cockpit.
cockpit.
Um,
After Mando's defeated.
And they've closed all the
Yeah.
doors, and all the Dark Troopers are sort of banging on doors that are eventually going to break through. And then this mysterious X-Wing flies in, and you see a lightsaber basically destroying a guy with a lightsaber destroying all the dark troopers. So at that stage, I personally didn't think it was who it was. Did you guys think it was?
As soon as I saw the X-Wing, I knew who it was.
Okay.
Yeah. When I saw the X-Wing, I was like,
I was
Doesn't
denying
make
it at the very last moment because I was
Yeah.
like, okay, are they really going to do it? And then I can see the glove, like, okay, are they really going to do it? And then the moment he takes off the hood, I'm like, okay, wow. This is
I thought it was really well done until he takes off the hood, and I'm like, who the
CGI.
fuck did this animation? Who the fuck did this CGI? This looks like Snapchat face app shit. Yeah.
I have to echo, buddy. Here, I actually, given that I just came off watching Rebels, and I heard Thrawn's name was dropped in the previous couple of episodes, I actually thought it was Ezra Bridger, because he has the same color lightsaber. He has the character seemed quite short stock compared to the Dark Troopers.
Yeah.
But that was just because the Dark Troopers were tall. I didn't really think it was who it was until the very moment where you see the lightsaber very clearly, and I'm like, I know whose lightsaber that is.
Yeah.
have you seen Rebels?
No.
The Ezra story? Okay.
No.
Basically, it's like a Padawan Jedi, and he goes missing at the end of Rebels, and
Okay.
Ahsoka searches for him, and yeah,
Ahsoka and Sabine. But you
Sabine,
you don't see whatever happens.
yeah,
So-
you don't see what happens to
So
him.
for me, personally, I was like kind of getting hyped up saying, is it Ezra? But then there's
I
one
think-
point where
I think the thing was, if it was Ezra, it would have alienated,
majority of the audience.
not majority, but like maybe half the audience
Yeah.
wouldn't have known, and then
it
half
would've,
of it.
but there was
yeah.
a point where I knew it couldn't have been him.
Yeah.
The moment that hallway scene, there's only one Jedi powerful enough to do that. And the moment he crushed that final Dark Trooper droid with his arm, and you could see the glove, and I'm like, okay, this is not any
Yeah.
normal.
Like, that's a Vader move,
I think-
right?
that is a Skywalker
Yeah.
move. Like that is a typical Anakin thing to do.
I think it would have been almost a better choice to go with Ezra, just because you wouldn't have had to do the CGI. You
CGI.
could have recast someone, and then
Yeah.
they could have gone with Ezra, and it would have been fine.
I mean, that's one way to look at it, but I think, going back to what I said at the very start of the episode, the reason I like Mandalorian so much is because it isn't linked to the Skywalker family.
It's not a Skywalker story.
Yeah. But now they've just directly linked to just Luke Skywalker, this is sort of the negative stuff I had about. It was cool. No
I
doubt
thought it was
about
cool.
No doubt about it. It was
The
like,
fight was sick. Yeah, it was cool.
and it was reminiscent of Darth Vader,
the Rogue One fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
all that was good, but when you think about it, the reason Mandalorian resonates with everyone, it's fresh. It's something different. It's something different from the Star Wars universe. Now they've just linked it back to everything that happens after this.
I think if they cast Sebastian Stan, then I would have liked it more.
heard that,
But
yeah.
it's just the CGI was so bad that I couldn't.
Yeah.
like,
It took you
distracted
out of
from
it.
the scene.
It took you out of it.
It was
Yeah.
surprising. When I saw it was actually Luke come out, I was actually delighted as an old-time fan, because you're exactly what Straven said. Up until this point, it was its own thing. It was its own new universe. It didn't have any callbacks to the original trilogy. This whole time, you kind of fed little pieces of information, like there's New Republic X-Wings. That means that there is Rogue Squadron there out somewhere, which means this Luke is maybe still alive somewhere doing something active in this time. This is the first time you actually bridge that across, and I get why they did it now. And I think the reason why they did it was from the X-Wing coming in, it was that whole setup of, in the passenger, you see two X-Wings around, so you know there's X-Wings in space. The initial people thought, oh, this is one of the New Republic Rangers. No, it's someone with a lightsaber.
A single X-Wing.
Single
Who else
X-Wing.
could it be?
Right. And so immediately, a lot of fans were like, they knew it was Luke the moment they saw the X-Wing. And when they saw the green lightsaber, the other half were like, I knew it. Then some people saw the black glove, like, that's gotta be him. They just kind of hyped it up. This is purely a reference for old
It's fan
fans.
service.
Yeah.
It's fan service.
Yeah.
But there's good fan service.
It's
and
done
there's
well.
bad
It's
fan
done well.
service.
Yeah.
It's probably on the good side, but it's very teetering onto the bad side, I reckon. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. Look, I think it's just the CGI. I think it's just the CGI that I really have.
And I think
get
the implications going forward, just because we know what happens to Luke after this, and we know what happens to, his Padawans and all of that.
Yeah, but I think they said that Grogu
Like-
doesn't get killed by Kylo Ren.
Well,
Yeah.
they can't do that now. After setting up
Yeah,
this
exactly.
character, they surely can't make him die in a fire or something. That
I
wouldn't make
think
sense.
that was the first thoughts of many people after watching, The Last Jedi and what happened in there.
Yeah.
A couple of things I'll say is, I think the reason why they went with CGI, this is the first time to see Luke de-aged. And I think in the history of this de-aging stuff, we see it in Rogue One with Carrie Fisher's character model de-age. We see it with Governor Tarkin, who actually Peter Cummings, the original actor. I think it was Peter Cummings.
Yeah.
So he was not alive to reference at that point. I had to purely recreate him with a stand actor and CGI. I think they actually had Mark Hamill on set for this one. That was his voice.
Yeah, they didn't.
If you look at his hand,
I read something. It was a stand-in, and he recorded the lines.
He recorded the lines
independently somewhere else.
The reason why it made me believe it was Mark Hamill was because if you look at his hand in that scene, it's quite an old hand, and it actually has the same profile as Mark Hamill's hand.
No, it's a stand-in. I'm sorry, it could be.
Is that being confirmed?
It's
because Mark Hamill's credit in that was not just the voice. It was. I'm pretty sure he did come into the studio at one point.
It's confirmed that it was stand-in, I think. Also, the guy had a way different body shape to Mark Hamill. Yeah.
So the reason,
but he did record the voice. There
was no facial reference done as well.
There must have been facial reference done, but it's just very bad facial reference.
Like that's the only thing I thought. That
it was probably the same as what they used in Rise of... You know, in that little bit in Rise of Skywalker where they show Luke training.
Luke and Leia training. So what I thought was there was obviously a body stand-in for the stunt and for that final scene when he walks in.
But he did facial...
So I think they actually when they did the close-ups, it was actually Mark Hamill.
Yes. Like, they used his face as a basic and then pasted it on the other guy's face.
Correct. I don't think Mark Hamill was actually in that costume in the scene.
What I'm saying is that in that scene when you see him coming out, the full body shot was not Mark Hamill. But the close-up shot when you see his face...
because they use his face for...
So he was on set, but they didn't show the rest of his body.
No, he wasn't on set. They use the construction of his face and they use the dialogues he makes to reconstruct it on that guy's face.
Okay.
He wouldn't have been in the same room as all these other guys.
All right, not even for the close-up, you reckon?
No.
That makes sense.
It would have looked better if he was 100%.
That would have been better.
I think it's just a time thing. They probably made this decision late in the game.
But even like deep fakes done on YouTube look better
than that.
Like,
but it's a...
I think someone's already done it. And
it looks so much better.
That's the thing.
It looked better except for the mouth. The mouth movements look very
okay, but this is a studio. They can fix that up.
I think
as opposed to doing this like shoddy CGI.
These guys are like the best graphics artists in the world, so
it's
they're
very
not going to
Disney-
do a shit job unless they don't have the time.
I think it's a very Disney approach, like to use a reference material and to recreate it from the reference material as opposed to using algorithm.
Yeah. But we've seen it done well before. So it's like you can do it
in the Marvel movies, they do it well.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson, they did it well. Like, you can do this really well.
Yeah.
That was Disney.
But I think it was just they didn't have the time to do it, and they probably didn't have the same... Like, they didn't have Samuel... Like, they had Samuel L. Jackson on set doing all the facial reconstruction.
And maybe because of COVID and all that, they just couldn't do it. Yeah.
So, like, they would have had to paste his face on the other guy's face, and it makes it a lot harder.
And also Mark Hamill looks a lot different to what he used to look like.
That's the biggest problem. The time passage. Because this is, 5 years after Return of the Jedi? So he wouldn't have aged too much compared to his original character model in that film.
Yeah.
So, I absolutely understand the technical challenges. It's interesting to see the reaction between older fans and newer fans of the film. Like, I think newer fans didn't get the same hype. The older fans kind of just took the CGI as it was and just accepted it. And like I could see a lot of reactions online thinking, it looks, it's Mark Hamill, but it's different.
Yeah, I think it just took me out of this. It was great. But then it just takes you out of it, doesn't it? Because you're like, and then also Pedro Pascal put in a really good performance in that scene, but you're still just thinking about Luke's face, and you're like, fuck, what was that? But Pedro Pascal does like a really good,
There's a very heartfelt, emotional sequence there with him and Grogu, and how he shows his face and Grogu touches it.
That's a beautiful scene.
It's very subtle as well, because he's someone who's not going to be used to showing his emotions, but he has to act as if he's someone who's like very repressed but is still having emotions. It's really well done.
Just coming back to Luke Skywalker just a little bit, the way they did him makes me think that he's not going to be part of another series, or they're not going to bring him back that much. Otherwise, they would have recast or made the CGI better. Because they would have had to test it out before they can say, let's make a series out of this, or let's do something else.
So question on that. So if Mandalorian season 3, will that be a season without Grogu?
Yeah.
So it'll just be Mandalorian?
Yeah. I don't think Luke Skywalker will play a big part in any of this.
He does say that he'll see him again. He promises that he'll see him again.
I'm not saying he won't see him again, but I don't think Luke Skywalker will play a big part in it. Grogu might come back, but Luke Skywalker...
So something obviously happens then.
There could be other Padawan helping to train Grogu as well. It might not just be Luke directly training all the time. It could be someone like other pupils helping out.
I think Dave Filoni will want to direct an episode where Ahsoka meets Luke.
Yeah.
I think that meeting has to happen at some point.
Correct.
If they do that, they bloody better recast him and get Sebastian Stan.
Hopefully Sebastian
Yeah.
Stan
So
comes in.
distracting.
I reckon Luke will come back. That's 100% sure for me. Purely because
I think they would have done a better job on this if he was going to play a big part, though.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're going to do a live action stand-in or if they're going to stick with the CGI, make it better. But what I do know is that in the story elements, he leaves at Grogu. He has his own Jedi Academy at this point from Legends. This is not confirmed. This is from Legends. He's back on Yavin and he's got his own school and whatnot. The events of Last Jedi happen much later down the track, like in Luke's middle age, you could say, when Ben Solo becomes of age. So we were talking about when Luke's still kind of setting up his own academy. In Return of the Jedi, Luke says something to Leia. He's like, I never knew my mother. I wish I'd known her. And that's when he's trying to tell Leia that she's his sister. Sorry for the spoiler, people. He's 30 years late. But the only person who actually knew Luke's mother, who's alive right now in the Star Wars universe, is Ahsoka. She knew Padme really well. And she's also the only other one who's known Anakin even better. And I think for them to have that cathartic, because one thing, Luke never met his parents, doesn't know. He did meet and redeemed Anakin at the end. It brought him back, yes. Ahsoka doesn't actually realize that Darth Vader was redeemed at the end of Return of the Jedi. The last thing you see in Rebels is she actually confronts Darth Vader, rips a bit of his mask off with the lightsaber.
Spoilers for Rebels.
Spoilers for Rebels, correct, yes, if you haven't seen it by now. And there's a real heartbreaking confrontation where she kind of sees the Anakin through the mask. But Anakin says to her, you have to die. That's the kind of destruction of her persona, of her master. That's it. It's gone. I can't redeem this person. He's gone to the dark side. That was her worst realization because she actually thought Anakin died in Order 66 because she couldn't feel his presence anymore at the end of season 7. She leaves the Rebels with that feeling of, well, that's what happened to my master. I can't do anything about it. That's what she's carrying with her in the Jedi, in the episode of the Jedi, when she actually tells Din and Grogu, I've seen what happens when someone has attachments and they're trained to become a Jedi. It's really bad. And she's still speaking about Anakin there. So she needs closure. I think Luke needs some connection or closure. It wouldn't make any sense not to have them meet. There's so much potential for, even if it's like a passing thing. But yeah.
What you're describing there is pure fan service. It is that is fan service to its core. It's like, I want to see these two characters meet because they have a big past together that could come together.
I wouldn't call it fan service so much as like you could say loose ends. So there's two loose ends where only those characters can complement and tie the ends through each other. But it would be fan service.
They don't need to meet. They don't, like, Ahsoka can go through thinking the same thing. Like, look, it would be, I get what you're saying. It would be nice. And the only people that are saying that would be fans. And I know a lot of fans, just like yourself, would like to see it. I just don't think it's necessary, though. Like, I don't think you need to revisit Luke's story. He's already got an end arc. He's
had closure, right?
His arc's finished. Ahsoka's arc's obviously not finished yet, but they're going to explore that more in the show. It depends where they take that. Depends where they take that.
And it's interesting to say that, his arc was concluded at the end of The Last Jedi. I think with the reactions that we're seeing now of Luke being brought back for the finale, the sheer joy and like the kind of vindication from fans who felt slighted from the sequel trilogy kind of feel vindicated in this finale. And it's like, and I feel like Filoni and Favreau were part of the crew who, even though they had real input in The Last Jedi and Return of Skywalker, they actually did have Filoni had a lot of input. I feel like they wanted to show a side of Luke that we all wanted to see, that we didn't get to see. So part of the fan service was, yes, this episode was huge fan service. I really do think that might be a guiding force in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but I don't think the reception's as positive as you might. I think it's positive, but I don't think it's positive like, I want to see more of this. Give me more of Luke Skywalker. I think that was cool, and I'm happy to see Luke do action, but let's leave the Skywalkers for a bit and let's go back to other stuff.
That's my personal feeling, but
I think it's about 50-50 that way.
Yeah, I think
people,
so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call myself like a diehard Star Wars fan or anything. I just like to see new things. That's all. So that's the viewpoint I'm coming from.
Yeah, I feel like for 9 movies we sort of had focus on the Skywalker trilogy, on the Skywalker saga, and I feel like they sort of tried to bring something else into it for the last movie, but they sort of failed with it.
Yeah.
But these guys are bringing new things into it and breathing fresh air into it, which is why I'm glad A, they sort of brought Luke into it, but B, I'm glad it was only for the last what. It was I think it was good, but it was 5 minutes in total.
Yeah,
right.
it's
It wasn't
not-
a
it's
whole
not
part of the
huge.
season.
Yeah.
So if they can keep it at that, and if they need to maybe reference Luke in season 3, because Grogu's training with Luke, they need to mention it at least. But if you don't have it, I'm not going to be.
He doesn't need to be a main character in
Exactly.
the show.
Yeah, I
he
think-
doesn't need to. Yeah,
Definitely not. Definitely.
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Less is more. in this
It's
case.
Mando's show to the core, and if they shift it to if they shift it to anyone else, fans or not fans, the show's going to tank.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so even if it is just a fan service, they have to.
The thing about all these shows is, all the episodes in this show, if you put a Jedi in there, then the episode ends in 1 minute because he's just going to wreck everyone.
There's no stakes. Yeah.
There's no stakes if you put a Jedi in there. He's
Unless-
way too powerful.
Unless you have an anti-Jedi, which is what the Mandalorian were. That's why the Mandalorian have armor resistant to lightsabers, which is why, if it was anyone apart from Mando, the episode would be done, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah.
because you have Mando, you can have a Jedi, which is that's counterbalance.
But if you have Mando and a Jedi going up against random Imperial
Working
forces,
together,
then
it's done. Yeah.
There's no stakes, and
Yeah.
it's just stupid. Yeah.
Well, there's going to be people that are happy then.
Yeah.
I think it's a 50-50 split. Some people will feel how Bhaskar felt, and some people will feel how I felt in some.
Yeah, I think from seeing the reaction, it seems like a split between down the middle of they're happy to see him, but they don't want it to be overdone, like you said. Definitely, I agree. Less is more in this case.
Yeah.
Because we have overexposure. One thing we haven't touched on yet is that whole interaction before Luke comes between Bo-Katan and the Mandalorian.
Which might be what they revisit in season 3.
Which is, they kind of say this is for another time, but they basically leave it. Mandalorian gives her the lightsaber, the dark saber, sorry, and Moff Gideon's kind of narrating the whole thing, saying, "Well, yeah, that's the whole story behind it. You can't just give it; she has to fight it."
Yes, to win
So
it.
that's an interesting dynamic.
But not to the death necessarily.
Not necessarily, but Bo-Katan's really conflicted here.
Yeah. But this is one of the negatives I actually had, was the fact that I felt like Giancarlo Esposito was underused in the season. He's such an amazing actor. You watch Breaking Bad, you watch some of the shows he's been in, he's incredible, right? And in this character as well, he kills it. And you only really see him in the finale do stuff. So that's why I felt like that they just didn't use him enough in this season
And
as they
he
did.
was very menacing.
Yeah.
Until after he loses the Darksaber, he becomes a little bit different then, but he is very menacing.
Yeah, super menacing, right?
Yeah.
And you can tell that I think he knows a lot more than he lets on. I would have loved to have seen more of him in the season, whether it's, throughout each episode, even if it's a few minutes in every episode, whatever it is, but just a bit more. They need to use him a bit more.
Absolutely. He's one of those characters that just is one of those antagonists that just knows the lore better than anyone else. He knows Mandalorian lore.
Yeah.
He identified Din Djarin by name in season 1 before anyone even knew who he was. He understands the whole idea about, why Baby Yoda is significant. I think there's a lot of arcane knowledge that he's obsessed with, which is a callback to Emperor Palpatine. It's also a callback to Thrawn, Grand Admiral Thrawn. They all had this fascination with arcane knowledge.
Yeah. Very commanding, very noticeable. And that's why I think he wants to inject himself with the same M count that he's trying to extract from Baby Yoda to make himself a Sith, because he would make a really good Sith.
Yeah, interesting. I think there's also potential. He spoke about the Night of 1,000 Tears, the purge of the Mandalorians, which we don't actually see. That doesn't happen in the Clone Wars. Last thing we see about Mandalore is, like I said, Empire's taken occupation, and
I think it's like the Mandalorian Civil War, right? Like what Boba Fett says that his father fought in the Mandalorian.
no, that's
Civil
different.
Wars.
That's the Mandalorians fighting each other.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying the Night of 1,000 Tears. I think that comes after the Civil War.
Yeah, it comes. That's when I don't know if it was the Empire retaking Mandalore, but it happens during the events of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And he references these weapons like E-Web blasters devastated those people. So yeah, we've got to see where that goes.
Obviously, there's lots to talk about. I've got a bit of trivia, then we can talk about just briefly talk about the shows that are coming, and we'll wrap it up, because this is probably going to be our longest episode ever. So the episode actually aired on the 5th anniversary of Force Awakens, and this is the first live-action appearance of Luke Skywalker on TV since The Muppet Show, The Stars of Star Wars in 1980.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So there is a post-credit scene, which is basically setting up the Boba Fett show. It's called Book of Boba Fett, and they've already announced the date, which is the December 2021, so a year from now. Upcoming Star Wars shows. So they announced 10 shows in this Disney Investor Conference, but They actually held back the Boba Fett one, so there's actually 11 shows coming up.
Yeah.
The other ones are Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, Rangers of the New Republic, Andor, The Acolyte, which is apparently 200 years before Phantom Menace.
It's the Old Republic.
The Bad Batch. There's a Lando show. There's Star Wars Visions, which is an anime-style anthology series. Yeah. Droid Story, which is also animated. Obviously, Mandalorian Season 3 and Book of Boba Fett is the 11th one.
Massive lineup.
Massive lineup, yeah.
No dates really announced for any of these, right?
No.
Which one are you most looking forward to out of that list?
Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Yeah, for me it's Obi-Wan and Andor. I'm really looking forward to Andor.
Not too keen on Andor,
Yeah.
but
The cast just has me very,
I
very
think
excited.
Obi-Wan and Ahsoka for me. The return of Hayden Christensen is massive.
that's in Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan, yeah. Because Andor, they've casted Genevieve O'Reilly, Stellan Skarsgård, Denise Gough, and Carl Solar. So it looks like it's a pretty stacked cast for a sideshow.
I guess the one I'm looking forward to is probably Obi-Wan, to be honest, but Boba Fett should be interesting as well.
Visions will be cool too. It'll be cool to see how Japanese, it'll be like the Animatrix, right? It'll be like short stories, 10 short stories.
And it'll be like the Dark Knight anthology that they did one for Batman.
Yeah, they did one for them as well. And then Acolyte will be interesting. Old Republic, we've never gotten any sort of TV or movie on the Old Republic. So
Yeah, I
it'll be cool
reckon
to see.
for me it's Obi-Wan and the Acolyte, because the Acolyte's only ever been explored in either games or those amazing CGI trailers you would see for the multiplayer online games, but the graphics would be terrible. The game, the trailers looked amazing movies.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested to see how they explore that sort of era. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And as a Clone Wars fan, the Bad Batch is probably the direct production continuation of the Clone Wars series. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that team.
It's a good year for Disney.
Cool.
Yeah, they've not just this, they've got all the Marvel stuff as well. So
Killing it, yeah.
Disney Plus is suddenly looking like a must-have streaming service for fans of Percy Jackson.
And that comes in.
Fans of Percy Jackson. Only Percy Jackson. There you go. Everyone else can fuck off. Percy Jackson or nothing. I actually really like Percy Jackson.
I'm going to get into it.
Yeah.
Is there a show or something?
It's coming out
on Disney Plus.
All right. I didn't know about that one. Yeah.
They're redoing it
Well, you can fuck off then.
There's a parody for you on another streaming service if you want to watch that.
There's a parody called Percy Jackson and Lightning Thief with Logan Lerman. It's a really good parody. You should watch it.
All right. Okay. On that note, I guess we'll wrap things up. Hope you enjoyed this very detailed, in-depth deep dive into the Mandalorian Season 2. Thanks to our guests. You've added so much value. We wouldn't have been able to discuss all this stuff because we haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels. So thanks to all of you.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting us. We could literally talk about this all night.
Yeah.
It's got to be cut somewhere.
Yeah, we're gonna. I think we're all a little bit hungry. That's all.
I'm hungry. Yeah.
Okay, bye.
So if people want to get in touch with us about Mandalorian Season 2, how do they go about it?
So we've got our email at cognitiverecalibrationpodcast@gmail.com and cognitive recalibration on all other platforms.
And if you want to support the podcast, please give us a good review on iTunes or Spotify. And if you do want to support us even further, there's going to be Amazon affiliate links in the episode description to anything Star Wars. I'll put all the Star Wars movies if you want to buy those on Blu-ray. And if you want to support us further, there's also a Buy Me a Coffee link where you can give us a one-off donation, which we'll use to further develop the podcast. All right. Once again, thanks everyone for listening to this episode, and thanks for your continued support. Hope you're all staying safe, and we'll see you in the next episode. See you later.
See ya.
See ya.
See you guys.
Yeah.